Back in 2009, Mr. Fantastic of the Fantastic Four takes a little trip to the inhuman city of Attilan, searching for the Infinity Gems. The massive teleporting inhuman bulldog Lockjaw happens to stumble on the Mind Gem and is granted telepathy. Using this telepathy to read Mr. Fantastic's mind, he decides to use his other power to go and round up the other gems. Along the way, Lockjaw runs into Hairball the cat belonging to Speedball, the dragon Lockheed, the companion of Kitty Pryde, Redwing, Falcon's pet Falcon, Throg, a frog with the powers of Thor, Zabu, the saber-toothed tiger ally of the Savage Lands Khazar, and Miss Lion, May Parker's dog. Despite the fact that this team are literally just super pets, they decide to team up as the Pet Avengers, and they go off to assemble the Infinity Gems as part of a 4-part limited series. A more recent Earth 616 version of the team from 2021 consisted of Lockjaw, Throg, and Lockheed still, but this time accompanied by Doctor Strange's ghost dog Bats, and Hugin and Munin, the Ravens of Thor, formerly belonging to Odin.
This X-Men team and roster, the Extreme X-Men, marked the return of Chris Claremont to the X-Men in a full-time capacity. Extreme X-Men Volume 1 is a series that started in 2001 and ran until 2004. It was a team that featured my girl Rogue as leader, who is soon going to be the leader of the X-Men again, or a X-Men team, which, you know, I'm all about because I love Rogue. The original Extreme X-Men roster features Beast, Psylocke, Bishop, Storm, Sage, and Thunderbird. Lifeguard, Gambit, and Slipstream were also added into the mix throughout the series. This team was originally brought together to find Destiny's premonition-filled diaries, but of course along the way was distracted by many other imminent threats, as happens when you're an X-Men team.
There have been several incarnations of the Outsiders in DC Comics, and most have been Batman or Batman family related, with one team even being led by Nightwing. The first ever version of the team came in 1983 after Batman gained a rather uncomfortable standing with the Justice League. The team had some notable moments, particularly because of its new characters like Katana and Geoforce. Batman and the Justice League would patch things up, and so he left the team to continue operating without him. During that time, they were operating in Markovia in order to receive funding and then moved to Los Angeles before they reunited with Batman and gained access to a Los Angeles Batcave. The last version of the team came following Batman Rip in 2008, where Alfred put together the team with each member representing a part of Batman's legacy, but obviously Batman actually never really bites the dust permanently, so that didn't really last.
Cape Sync is a superhero team, or really a superhero agency I guess I should say, from the same world as Invincible. In fact, as early on as issue number 8 of the Invincible series, you can see some of their members featured in the background. Not only that, but they also ended up getting their own spin-off comic as well. Although I believe it only lasted 3 issues total. It was a miniseries. You know, that's how it goes sometimes. Though there were Cape Sync backup stories I believe in certain issues of Invincible as well, so if you really like it you can also check those out, which also told the team's story. The miniseries centered initially around Bolt, who welcomes a new recruit to the team as his partner. The team is more like a business and kind of seems to operate kind of like a superpowered police station or a police office. People even get paid and everything. Kid Thor is the new kid in town who joins up with Bolt. Bolt, we learn initially wanted his name to be Black Samson, but obviously that name was already taken by the Guardians of the Globe members, so alas, it was unavailable when he joined up with Cape Sync, and that's why he's Bolt.
The team known as ForceWorks was formed by Iron Man, who had left the Avengers due to a dispute as to the role of superhumans. ForceWorks maintained the outlook that rather than being a reactionary force, they should try to preempt both natural and man-made disasters. The team was initially composed of Iron Man, US Agent, Spider-Woman, Julian Carpenter, Scarlet Witch, and Wonder Man, which in my opinion is such an interesting group of heroes. But by the end of their first mission, Wonder Man was thought to be deceased at the hands of the invading Kree, and shortly after the alien Sentry took his place, only to be completely forgotten when the team disbanded. The team fought in several skirmishes, but really only lasted about 2 years. The characters were mainly reabsorbed into the ranks of the Avengers afterwards.
I like to refer to this next one as the other XSE team. This team also spiraled out of a team that we talked about previously on this list, Extreme X-Men. XSE here stands for the Extreme Sanctions Executive. Similar to the original XSE that Bishop was a part of in the future, or in his future, this team is also like a military police force, meant to maintain and in some cases enforce peace is kept between mutants and humans. Storm was asked to create the team by the United Nations and eventually would increase its numbers by recruiting the rest of her X-Men, making this another government-sanctioned mutant team, like X-Factor was originally. Team members have included Bishop, Cannonball, Magma, Rachel Summers, Psylocke, Rogue, Sage, Wolverine, X-23, and Gambit. Now that's a team.
Look, even though the book was cancelled in 1978 after a mere 17 issues, and many people, including the heroes on the team, look at it as an embarrassment, the Champions roster was actually pretty darn capable. With a team of 2 founding X-Men, Iceman and Angel, combined with heavy hitters Hercules, the Spirit of Vengeance Ghost Rider, and being led by Natasha Romanoff Black Widow, the Champions were aptly named and could kick some serious butt when given the opportunity. The team fought familiar villains like Titanium Man and the Griffin, but even began to develop their own rogues gallery with new villains such as Rampage and Swarm, and they even got an addition to the team in the form of Black Goliath before the book was cancelled. The team was intended to reform in 2007, only they were forced to rename as The Order since Marvel had lost the trademark for the Champions over the years.
You've heard of Green Lanterns, maybe you've even heard of Yellow Lanterns or Red Lanterns or even Black Lanterns, but how about Blue Lanterns? Yeah, that's a color too. Blue Lanterns have only made a few appearances in the new continuity, and even before that, during the New Earth days of DC, they weren't necessarily the most frequent to appear. Mainly, I feel like people just know Green Lanterns, whose color of course represents willpower. To be a Green Lantern, you must be strong in will. So, what's blue about? What's the whole blue thing? To be a Blue Lantern, you must be full of hope. So beautiful. I feel like I could be a Blue Lantern, honestly. If Green Lanterns are like the intergalactic police, Blue Lanterns are like therapists or peacekeepers or priests maybe. They have long been allies to the Green Lanterns, and their powers actually provide a boost to fellow Green Lanterns when they're nearby. Pretty cute. This is because their whole focus is of course on belief and hope, having faith in those around them. As such, many of their names start with a title like Saint, Sister, or Brother. I'd definitely be Sister. Sister Amanda, Blue Lantern. Sister McKnight.
Kind of like the Champions, DC's Detroit League is another team that gets a real bad rap, but actually has a pretty stacked roster when you take a closer inspection. After Aquaman, a charter member of the original Justice League, decided that the Justice League members were too interested in their own individual problems to be part of an effective team, he used his position to disband the team and establish the Detroit League. This new team, with half old-timers and half newbies, was largely used to add some diversity to the DC heroic lineup. Whether it achieved that or not is up to the reader. Made up of League mainstays like Martian Manhunter, Aquaman, Zatanna, and Elongated Man, along with newbies like Vibe, Gypsy, Vixen, and Commander Steel, it's often considered the worst roster of the team, but if you actually look at the roster and do some critical thinking, you'll find that it's very powerful indeed. Martian Manhunter and Zatanna alone are absolute powerhouses. Despite the jokes, Aquaman or even Commander Steel both make really effective tanks, and the rest of the team is quite capable in a variation of different situations.
The God Squad is about as powerful as they sound, but they still remain one of the lesser known teams in the Marvel Universe. The team was originally assembled by the Council of Godheads, and first came together during the events of Secret Invasion. The team first formed in The Incredible Hercules issue number 117 in 2008. The original roster included Adam the Demogorge, Snowbird, the Eternal Ajax, and Amatsu Mikaboshi, later known as, of course, the Chaos King. The roster would go on to include such impressive members as Silver Surfer, Galactus, Circe, Thor, Amadeus Cho, and of course, Hercules himself.
Now, when we say that these teams deserve better, there really isn't a better example than the Harvesters. After the events of the superhuman Civil War, Iron Man created the 50-State Initiative. This was essentially an initiative to set up government-funded superhero teams throughout each of the United States. Some of these teams were already established groups of heroes, but for some states, completely new groups composed of local heroes were formed. The Sunflower State, Kansas, gained its team in the form of the Harvesters. This new team was made up of pretty strange heroes that we hadn't seen before. Topeka, who led the team, was basically just a super soldier. Then there was Pioneer, who had the power of the plains, as she put it. Sunflower, who was literally a human sunflower who got stronger under direct sunlight and appeared to have a high degree of durability. There was Meadowlark, who could fly and sing to hypnotize people. And then, of course, there was Grainbelt, whose body was literally made of grain that he could control. Why did they deserve better? Well, this team's only claim to fame came when they faced off against a zombie clone of the hero Hyperion, who is basically the Marvel equivalent of Superman, and he utterly destroyed each member of this team. They did not stand a single chance. Only Pioneer just barely made it out alive by raising up an entire herd of undead cattle and trampling the zombie Hyperion, who then succumbed to mad cow disease, and I wish I made that up. Now, most of you nerds have heard about about the Skrulls. This alien race has been a nuisance in Marvel Comics ever since their first appearance in Fantastic Four #2. The Skrull members who fought the Four at this time ended up hypnotized into believing they were actually cows by Reed Richards, and they shapeshifted into and were stuck as cows. What I'm sure Reed did not anticipate is that these Skrull cows ended up finding themselves in a butcher and turned into beef. This Skrull beef was then consumed by regular old Earthlings. Now, while a good majority of people did not survive the Skrull cow meat, a select few did, and had the Skrull's adaptable DNA code transferred into their human cells, resulting in a condition called Skrullivoria-induced Skrullophobia. The infected individuals gained the ability to shapeshift like a Skrull, but also developed an intense irrational fear and hatred of the Skrull, and they came together to form the aptly named Skrull Kill Crew. Fueled by their irrational impulses to destroy the Skrull, they helped prevent the Skrulls from attacking other people, but they even faced off against other villains like Baron von Strucker. It's just a really unfortunate way to gain a superpower. Now, X-Force is the awesome Black Ops X-Men related team with characters like Domino and Cable and Cannonball and Wolverine and Warpath, and it's awesome. But for a short little while, it was decidedly not awesome. In the year 2000, X-Force got cancelled and rebranded into what eventually would become X-Statix. This team isn't exactly one of the premier mutant teams in the world, and that's putting it lightly. The original team was made up of the mutants Zeitgeist, who has the power of Super Puke, La Nuit with Dark Force powers, Battering Ram, who was a big purple goat looking man, Plasm, who had liquidy water powers, Gin Genie, who could create earthquakes depending on how much she drank, and Sluck, who was basically a squid man. But all of those original members, minus 3 of them who I didn't mention, and Sluck, who was blown up by a tank in South Africa, all got completely decimated in spectacularly embarrassing fashion during a rescue mission to save a pop music boy band named Boys R Us. Turns out their demise was actually planned by the team's manager, coach, and its leader, Zeitgeist, because they thought a team with a constantly changing roster and high body count would gain them fan interest. The team managed to go on with pretty horrible results. There have been 28 members of X-Statix who have passed away over their history, with only 9 surviving. 9. Okay, so we have X-Statix, we have X-Force, we have the X-Men of course, and we have a whole handful of other X-branded teams, but some mutants aren't considered presentable to the outside world because whatever their mutation is, it has been deemed either gross or terrifying by the wider Marvel human society, or they are mutants who are just bitter about being persecuted for being mutants. This group banded together, named themselves the Morlocks, and headed down into the Morlock tunnels beneath New York City. Already, without anything happening to them other than their mutations, these characters have it rough and deserve better. But then, to add flame to the fire, the Morlocks undergo tragedy after tragedy after tragedy, with one of the worst being the event known as the Mutant Massacre, where Mr. Sinister and the Mutant Gambit put together a group of villainous characters and led them into the tunnels to commit, well, a massacre. And it was all because another villain, Dark Beast, created some of these Morlocks, and Mr. Sinister didn't like that. Sometimes it takes the smallest of things to bring people together, and while that may sound like an extremely beautiful sentiment, I'm saying it in relation to the villainous team known as the Headmen, who it seems came together because each of their powers revolves around their heads in one way or another, and it's honestly kind of unsettling in my opinion. Putting their heads together, figuratively, not literally, these scientists sought out world domination, bringing them into conflict with the Defenders, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man. The quartet consisted of Arthur Nagin, their leader, who had his head transplanted onto the body of a gorilla, Ruby Thursday, who replaced her own head with an organic computer capable of changing shape, Gerald Morgan, aka Shrunken Bones, who accidentally shrank his own skeleton, including his skull, so he basically just had really baggy skin, and Chandu the Mystic's head had been transplanted by Nagin onto a number of different bodies throughout his time, making him quite the versatile little guy. Not gonna lie. The Champions of Los Angeles were the first West Coast-based superhuman team. They formed like all great superhero teams do, with several heroes happening to just meet by chance against a great threat. In this case, that threat took the form of the Greek god of death, Pluto. The group consisted of 2 former X-Men, Angel and Iceman, the Greek god of strength, Hercules, who I swear is super underappreciated, Johnny Blaze, the original Ghost Rider, and the Russian spy Black Widow, who led the team. After defeating Pluto, the champions of Los Angeles, or just the champions, decided to stick together as a team. Warren Worthington III, aka Angel, was the wealth behind the group, and with his money they bought their own Quinjet and named it the Champ Jet, which I find hilarious because over time the members of this team started to become embarrassed by the entire idea of the team as a whole. Both Iceman and Angel called it an embarrassment and a nightmare because they had no idea what they were doing. But still, they had a few more adventures working with X-Force, and they had some additions to the roster with Black Goliath, who aided the team in a scientific aspect, and another Russian female hero, Darkstar, who was originally there to capture Black Widow but ended up changing sides instead. I'm gonna be honest, I kinda love the lineup of this team. I'd read it if they came back. Now, you remember how the Headmen all came together based on their head-related powers? Well, I'll do you one better. How about the Death Throws, whose powers and names all have something to do with commonly throwing stuff. The leader, Ringleader, threw together teammates Bombshell, Knick-Knack, Oddball, Tenpin, and Throwdown into a group that honestly works really well together, juggling their various different throwing instruments between each other. They worked so well together, in fact, that they were even hired to and succeeded in breaking the villain Crossfire out of prison. However, once they had taken Crossfire to their HQ, they discovered that Crossfire was broke. His assets had all been impounded, and he had lost all of his useful connections. These guys did battle with characters like Captain America, Crossfire, Hawkeye, and even Loki, of all people, who stopped the group from robbing the Big Top Casino in Las Vegas. Their Marvel Wiki even lists their origins as, and I quote, a joint effort to perform criminal and mercenary acts while using juggling expertise. I honestly can't even believe this group of villains exists and that they haven't been able to get Bullseye into their ranks. What the heck's up with that? Okay, of all the teams on this list, I think that Horticulture may be my favorite. For starters, they look so cool, but then you find out that it's actually just a bunch of older women between the ages of 64 to 81 who are all expert botanists and want to bring Earth back to a more pristine time when it had about 7 billion less people on it, and it was ruled by plant life. I just love how they use their regular names, and the names just kinda suit their ages and interests in plants. We got Augusta Bromes, Lily Lamus, Edith Scutch, and Opal Vetiver. Gosh! What a bunch of winners. But yes, that's right, these ladies want to basically exterminate most of the Earth's human population and bring plants back to the forefront, specifically flowers. This goal brings them into conflict with the X-Men in 2019's X-Men number 3. Beyond biological modifications believed to have been made to themselves, the women of Horticulture are experts at manipulating the environment to suit their extinction agenda, and they're also computer programmers selling software to Orcus to monitor Krakoan gateways. They did get pretty handily walloped though, so Second to last, as part of kid-centric Star Comics, Marvel decided to release a team composed of animal superheroes, which is cool. But the difference here is this team of animal heroes were cybernetically enhanced super intelligent animals with absolutely massive arsenals and awesome exoskeletons, which is much cooler. And they fought for the environment, which is even cooler. This team was made up of Boomer, a kangaroo, Lionheart, a lion, Soar / Slipstream, an eagle, Reckless, who was a bear, and Dr. Echo / Surfstreak, who was a dolphin. Does it sound kind of ridiculous? Sure, but it is awesome. This team was co-created by Multicore, spearheaded by Dr. Randall Pierce, and it was all part of Weapons 2, which itself was the second project after Weapon 1. Who would have thought? Also known as Project Rebirth, also known as the project that created Captain America. Now, some of you may know that these projects were part of a bigger thing called Weapons Plus, who would eventually go on to create Man-Thing, Luke Cage, Nuke, Typhoid Mary, Phantom X, the Stepford Cuckoos, and of course, Wolverine. So most people know that they aren't exactly a good group of people. While their original series was cancelled after only a few issues in Wolverine and Captain America Weapons Plus #1, those two heroes investigated an abandoned Weapons Plus site where they found the team kept in hibernation tanks full of liquid. The bear, Reckless, was freed from his container but attacked the duo, resulting in his passing. And last up today, first ever introduced in 1989's West Coast Avengers Volume 2, number 46, the Great Lake Avengers formed after Mr. Immortal put out an ad in the local personals seeking men and women of action to join forces and form a team of super friends. This managed to catch the attention of Avengers members Hawkeye and Mockingbird. In order to help them out, the Great Lakes Avengers were trained by the duo, and the rest was history. The team is made up of pretty much Z-list heroes, with the main lineup usually consisting of Mr. Immortal, Doorman, Big Bertha, and Flatman. Naturally, as a sort of running joke throughout Marvel Comics since their introduction, the team goes up against some of the zaniest villains and situations I have ever seen, and they don't do particularly well. But I'll be darned if I don't have a soft spot for this team. The funny thing about most joke characters and teams is that they almost always end up actually doing some pretty extraordinary things from time to time.
This X-Men roster we're about to talk about marked the return of Chris Claremont to the X-Men in a full-time capacity. Extreme X-Men Volume 1 is a series that started in 2001 and ran till 2004. It was a team that featured my girl Rogue as leader. You know I'm all about Rogue. The original Extreme X-Men roster also featured Beast, Psylocke, Bishop, Storm, Sage, and Thunderbird on the team. Lifeguard, Gambit, and Slipstream were also added to the mix throughout. Honestly, I love Lifeguard and I don't think she gets enough love. This team was originally brought together to find Destiny's premonition-filled diaries, but of course along the way was distracted by many other imminent threats. As you do. The Great Ring of Arakko is exclusively made up of Omega level mutants, which really tells you how much of a powerhouse team they would be. They are the ruling body of Arakko, which is the sister mutant island nation to Krakoa, which of course eventually goes on to become Mars, and yeah, we've had a whole adventure with them. In fact, Arakko and Krakoa are actually less siblings and are more romantically tied in terms of the islands themselves. They're both sentient mutant islands, and for a long time they were attached to one another and also kind of in love, although now they prefer to be separate. They tried to be reunited after Arakko was liberated, but then they just weren't feeling it at that time. You know how it is. Arakko's ruling government has 4 distinct sections which govern different parts of their civilization, with some areas having more power at given times. For example, in war times, Dawn is the area that typically gets more say, as this is the area that would rule and govern during that time. For years, the Iraqi were at war with the Men, so this would have been a very prominent section for many years in their history. And it's something that the mutants of Arakko struggle with releasing themselves from, the obligation to always be on guard and always be at war. While Uranos faced off with the Great Ring of Arakko and pretty much cleaned their clock, pretty recently actually, this should not make us undermine their strength, as Uranos is basically on a whole other level by himself as one of the most powerful, ruthless, and evil Eternals that we've ever seen in comics, so yeah. Not all teams on my list here are going to be the good guys when it comes to our X-Men rosters, and this is one of those teams. It was simply too good for me to not include. And the Fantastic Extreme X-Men, this is a team of villains from alternate realities, and even perhaps the main reality that our multiversal X-Men team, led by Earth 616's Dazzler, must face. The 10 evil Xaviers features one that is a cowboy, another that is a Cthulhu-like floating brain, and one that is a giant Akanti whale, and so many more amazing weird alternates of the X-Men's leader and mentor, Charles Xavier, aka Professor X. This one is from the 2010 series Generation Hope and was under Cyclops' banner, ultimately following the events of Regenesis. Though the team itself was led by mutant Messiah Hope Summers, and its roster consisted of No Girl, Pixie, Primal, Sebastian Shaw, Transonic, Velocidad, and Zero at that time. Though originally Hope's team started pre-Regenesis as just being 5 mutants, including Hope herself as one of those 5, with Velocidad, Oya, Primal, and Transonic on the team. The team was sort of brought together as a search and rescue group who were acknowledged as the 4 of the 5 lights of Cerebra. Hope basically triggered the rebirth of the mutant gene, activating these mutants, and the 5th light was what they sought and why they basically came together, heading to Tokyo, Japan to find out this 5th light. Zero was the mutant they sought, who would of course eventually join the team. While everyone might focus on the battle of the Atom Future Brotherhood team, as Raze has, a tendency to steal the show, we all love Raze, plus my girl Zoran Jean, and also featuring Molly Hayes, people tend to forget about the awesomeness that was the Future X-Men team as well, the real Future X-Men. This team featured a much more skilled Iceman, who now was known as Ice Wizard, Wiccan, who had become Sorcerer Supreme at this point, Chimera, who is believed to be Storm's daughter that she had with Black Panther, Shogo, Jubilee's son, known as Sentinel X, Colossus armed with Magic's Soul Sword, Kid Omega as Phoenix, and Jubilee as Wolverine. I kinda love all of this. Jubilee as Wolverine's a little weird, but I'm still kinda into it. Because, yeah, Jube's following in Wolverine's footsteps is super cute. The Dark X-Men are what we get when Norman Osborn is basically put in charge of all the super teams you can imagine. And yes, as I said, not everyone on my list is going to be a good X-Men team, because that's not as much fun. I love a little bit of evil sprinkled in. Now this team came out of the Dark Reign period over at Marvel Comics. Norman ended up becoming the world's greatest hero, at least in civilians and the government's eyes, after he successfully shot and killed Skrull Queen Veronki, in essence ending Secret Wars and in a weird twist saving the day. Not what you'd expect from Norman, but there we were. As a reward, he was given the task of creating a new organization to take over for the disbanded S.H.I.E.L.D. Norman created Hammer in response and made his own teams of both Dark Avengers and Dark X-Men. His initial roster included Dark Beast, Mystique, Mimic, and Omega. I feel like Dark Beast is such a great evil mutant that he generally just ends up being on almost every evil mutant X-Men team, but also I love Dark Beast, so I'm kind of fine with that. Although to be fair, Hank was giving him a run for his money recently when we had the previous incarnation of Hank as the main continuity one in the X-Men. And I wish Dark Beast was still alive though, so I at least had some way to rationally explain that whole version of Hank's behavior, who I thought might have been Dark Beast for a while, but then considering that Dark Beast is dead and everything else, and we also see proof of that, yeah, sadly that was not the case. Spider-Man Special Class is a great and overall underrated team. They were pulled together as a result of Storm finding some papers belonging to Logan after his death, mentioning the intention to put together a special class of mutants for Spider-Man to teach, made up of kids who were deemed most likely to become villains. Which honestly, for some of these people, I can't believe that he's like, these people, they could become villains. They could become villains, bub. They go on a couple of adventures together, but tragically wouldn't last too long as a team, but I just love the idea of Spider-Man teaching a group of mutants. The team included Ernst, No Girl, Rockslide, Hellion, Shark Girl, Glob Herman, and Eye-Boy, with quite a few of these younger mutants being some of my favorites. See if you can guess who is among them in the comments, and share with me some of your favorite mutants, please. The Extinction team truly is a scary one. They came together in response to the fact that the Phoenix Force was believed to be returning. It was thought that the Phoenix Force wanted to merge with mutant Messiah Hope Summers and have her act as its host. While the X-Men were more optimistic about the Phoenix's return, the Avengers were not so much. As a result, the mutants deployed their own team to fight against the Avengers, but which was initially also created to defend the mutant island of Utopia and the world against extinction level threats, hence the name. Extinction Team. The Extinction Team included Cyclops, Magneto, Namor, Storm, Danger, Magic, Hope Summers, Emma Frost, and Colossus. Now, talk about a powerhouse lineup, that's wild. Never mind the Phoenix Force, this team in and of itself seems frightening enough to justify the Avengers' concern. If these mutants all got together and I was on the Avengers, I would also be worried. Assuming they don't trust the mutants having power too, which, yeah. Which, while at times both teams have been allied, has always seemed to remain a bit of a touchy subject to the Avengers, who kind of have a history of not playing well with other major superhero teams in the Marvel Universe. In fact, they also even have a history of not playing well with each other within their own team, so yeah. This team is what I like to call the other XSE. This team also spiraled out of a team that we talked about previously, Extreme X-Men. XSE here stands for the Extreme Sanctions Executive. Similar to the original XSE that Bishop was a part of in the future, this team is also like a military police force meant to maintain, and in some cases by force, ensure peace is kept between mutants and humans. By force. Storm was asked to create the team by the United Nations and eventually would increase its numbers by recruiting the rest of the X-Men, making this another government-sanctioned mutant team, kinda like X-Factor was, or at least, X-Factor was to start. Team members have included Bishop, Cannonball, Magma, Rachel Summers, Psylocke, Rogue, Sage, Wolverine, X-23, and Gambit. What a fun team. I think it's such a fun team. I mean, when you consider that the sword bearers of Arakko were all pretty much kicking the champions of Krakoa's butts, we have to put them on this list, right? I mean, it's just too cool. While the Araki are newer when it comes to the mutant status quo and what we consider to be an X-Men team, considering we, are just getting to know them still. They're still pretty new to the canon, and they're loosely tied to the X-Men through both their connection to Apocalypse and of course all being mutant. At the end of the day, they are still mutants, and I personally think we could kind of see them as X-Men, you know what I mean? Or at least X-Men adjacent, and for that reason, I think that we can include them on this list, which is really more about, mutant teams than I would say specifically X-Men sister teams or X-Men rosters. I'm kind of keeping it a little bit more general here because there's just so many cool X-based teams. We just use the name X-Men because, it makes more sense in relation to Marvel Mutants, and it's more appealing than if we put, Marvel Mutants in the title of this video. It's more clickable, you dig? The Sword Bearers of Arakko didn't just best their Krakoan competitors in contests of combat and wit, but also in some of the more charismatic and honestly odd contests during the Ten of Swords or Otherworld tournament, also beating them in a dancing competition, a runway model one, and a scavenger hunt, to name a few of those seen in X-Force issue number 14 of the 2019 series.
Number 10. The UFOs. The UFOs are a group of Hulk villains who wanted to recreate the accident that gave the Fantastic Four their powers. They hired the engineers who built the Fantastic Four's original ship and set off, hoping to be pelted by cosmic rays. Their ground facility was discovered by Bruce Banner, who thought the team were being exposed to the rays by accident and brought the shuttle down. The team resented the fact that Banner tried to save them, as they thought that longer exposure would have made them even more powerful. This resentment caused them to vow revenge on Banner and the Hulk. The UFOs have 4 members: Ironclad, X-Ray, Vapor, and Vector. Ironclad was transformed by the cosmic rays into organic metal that he can control, making him able to increase or decrease his weight at will. This allows him to hover in the air or come down on his enemies with the force of a mountain. He also has superhuman strength and durability. X-Ray was transformed into living energy and therefore can't really be hurt. He can fly, turn invisible, and emit radiation blasts, as well as negative gamma rays, which allow him to transform Hulk back into his human form. I suppose he could also use this power to give most of the Avengers cancer. Vapor can transform into any gas she wants, usually using it to poison her enemies. Vector has telekinetic powers which he can use to move objects as well as focus into blasts, which have shown to be able to flay most of the Hulk's skin. Sure, the Hulk has managed to take them out on his own, but if they can get him off the board with X-Ray's powers, the other Avengers will have a challenge taking out this supergroup gone bad.
In at number 9 is the Sinister Six. Spider-Man is one of the best heroes Marvel has to offer. Maybe not the most powerful, but arguably the most popular and inspiring. But gosh darn it if he doesn't have a knack for absolutely ticking off his villains with incredibly good, and some might say annoying, quips. He drives villains insane, which is likely why his 6 greatest villains came together to try and bring him down for good. The original team was made up of Dr. Octopus, Electro, Kraven the Hunter, Mysterio, Sandman, and the Vulture, and each one of these villains can arguably give the Avengers a hell of a time on their own, but together they are a force to be reckoned with. There have been multiple different versions of this team, with other villains swapping out, and sometimes they've even had more than just 6 villains on the team. Dr. Octopus, Electro, and the Vulture are usually there, but some other strong villains who have shown up on this team include Green Goblin and Hobgoblin, Lizard, Rhino, Scorpion, Shocker, Venom, and Swarm. Now, I'm keeping them all the way up here because honestly, they get beaten way too often by Spider-Man alone, and they have a huge weakness in the form of being incredibly bad at cooperating with one another. Although, when the Sinister 12 came for Spider-Man, he needed the help of Black Cat, Captain America, Iron Man, Daredevil, Yellow Jacket, and the Fantastic Four for them to hold their own, which is a hell of a feat for the villains. I'll give them that.
Number 8. Alpha Strike. Due to my compulsive need to slowly turn this into an Alpha Flight channel, I present to you Alpha Strike. Alpha Strike is a team led by the Master of Evil, who with a group of villains and a few mind-controlled heroes managed to take over Canada and nearly destroy Alpha Flight in the process. Members of this team include a brainwashed Vindicator who has a battle suit that allows her to lift heavy objects, fly, teleport herself westward at the speed of the Earth's rotation, and fire energy beams that can incinerate a person with ease. Other members include Purple Woman, who like her father the Purple Man can compel people able to do whatever she tells them, Citadel, who has a healing factor and adamantium armor grafted onto his body, as well as super strength so powerful he was able to send Colossus flying, the Wendigo, who routinely gives the Hulk a run for his money, and Ranark, who is a powerful user of dark magic, who was once a shaman who tried to claim enough power to become a god. And to anyone who doesn't think the Master would be a threat to the Avengers, I remind you that he already was, as it was he, disguised as Canada's ambassador to the Alpha Flight space program, who manipulated the Inhuman Profiler's evidence in order to isolate Captain Marvel and help cause the second Marvel Civil War. Number 7. The Liberators. Hailing from the Ultimate Universe of Earth 1610, the Liberators are a group of supervillains who, with under-the-table support from the governments of Russia, France, China, North Korea, Iran, and Syria, invaded the United States. In an effort to counter the United States super team, the Ultimates, the team consisted of each country's version of a super soldier, as well as thousands of mercenaries who each had battle suits that granted them super strength and flight, but shortened their lifespans to only 1 month. Due to extensive planning before the invasion to counter the Ultimates, the Liberators were able to successfully invade in just a few days, taking out the Fantastic Four, the Ultimates reserves, as well as Quicksilver, Scarlet Witch, and Spider-Man. The Colonel is an Iranian version of Captain America, having a similar power set. This universe's version of the Abomination is from China, but is otherwise very similar to his 616 counterpart. Crimson Dynamo is a Chinese Iron Man who has a battle suit as well as 50 giant-sized duplicates that he can control. Perrin is the Russian equivalent of Thor, sporting a hammer and a sickle. Hurricane is a North Korean speedster. The ultimate version of Swarm is a mutant woman from Syria who can control millions of bugs at a time. Schizoid Man is the Frenchman who can duplicate himself in a manner similar to Multiple Man. And rounding out the team is the god of mischief himself, Loki, who doesn't have a personal stake in the fight, but thought it could be fun to help start World War III. Between all these superpowered foes and their augmented army, the Avengers of Earth 616 would have a hard time overcoming these Liberators.
Coming in at number 6 is Intelligentsia. While some teams have power in raw strength or battle prowess, Intelligentsia has brain power, which basically means they get away with things much more often and for much longer. The team is made up of some of the smartest villainous minds. The leader, MODOK, Mr. Sinister, Wizard, Dr. Doom, Egghead, Claw, Mad Thinker, and more have all at some point been a part of this group. Initially, they formed to exchange information between themselves, but then began collecting parts of the Library of Alexandria scattered in some of the most legendary places, because that's just how it works, and they even caused the arrival of the Beyonder. But in my humble opinion, the team became much cooler during World War Hulk. When Hulk came back to Earth, waging war on the planet, Leader brought the team together, and using their knowledge to hack into defense satellites and harness cosmic energy, they brought the hulking behemoth all the way down to the ground. Using this tech, they managed to figure out how to use cosmic energy and gamma radiation to create incredibly powerful beings like the Red Hulk, Red She-Hulk, A-Bomb, and Amadeus Cho, although this led to their defeat because they're still villains. But in World War Hulk, they managed to succeed where the heroes had failed, and that's saying something. Now we have the new Intelligentsia, and I'm excited to see them do something truly villainous and very cool.
Number 5. The Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. A frequent foe of the X-Men, the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants is a group formed by Magneto with the goal of either eradicating or subjugating humanity so that mutant kind can take their place as the dominant species on Earth. While membership has fluctuated over the years, it has played host to villains such as Magneto, who has been able to take on the Avengers by himself in the past, as well as Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch, who of course later joined the Avengers. Some of the other members they have had over the years include Mystique, Toad, the Juggernaut, the Blob, Pyro, Mastermind, and Sabretooth, just to name a few. With these powerful team members and their Omega level leader, it would take an impressive roster of Avengers to triumph over this Brotherhood. I mean, what's Iron Man going to do against the Master of Magnetism other than die horribly? The Brotherhood consistently gives the X-Men a run for their money, and frankly, the X-Men are usually way more powerful than the Avengers, so Earth's mightiest heroes would have one hell of a fight on their hands. In order to even stand a chance, they would have to be fighting with a roster that includes Captain Marvel and the Hulk.
Coming to number 4 is the Dark Avengers. Okay, so after the events of Civil War, Iron Man became head of S.H.I.E.L.D. This was pretty quickly followed by the Secret Invasion event where the entire world was basically infiltrated by the Skrulls under Tony Stark's watch. That led the people of the world to not trust him as S.H.I.E.L.D's leader, and so Norman Osborn of all people was chosen as the new director of S.H.I.E.L.D., and somehow a lot of people thought that was a good idea. Norman did a mass rebranding, turning S.H.I.E.L.D. into Hammer, which doesn't actually stand for anything, it just sounds cool. His Thunderbolts became a Black Ops team, and a bunch of Avengers quit, which prompted him to take on new members. Bullseye, Moonstone, and Venom, who are all loyal members of the Thunderbolts, came in dressing up as Hawkeye, Miss Marvel, and Spider-Man respectively. Two extremely strong Avengers, Ares God of War and Robert Reynolds the Sentry, both remained on the team. Then there was also Daken, the son of Wolverine, adopting a costume like his dad's, and Novar, a Kree who took on the Captain Marvel title. Lastly, Osborn himself suited up in a suit of Iron Man armor, but with the Captain America red, white, and blue, plus a star, dubbing himself the Iron Patriot. A team that includes Sentry is almost always a powerhouse, but then you add these other team members and manipulate Sentry to unleashing the Void. The heroes had their hands full just trying to deal with these Dark Avengers and Norman Osborn's hammer. And in at number 3 is the Horsemen of Apocalypse. Every time the ancient, incredibly powerful mutant Apocalypse shows up to cause a headache for the heroes, he is almost always accompanied by his horsemen. Extremely powerful mutants, and sometimes non-mutants, chosen by Apocalypse to receive biological, genetic, and celestial enhancements that push their power to a substantially higher level. They can have their powers augmented or receive completely new powers altogether, whatever would help Apocalypse and whatever his current goal is. Some of the most powerful beings have been one of the Horsemen at some point. I'm talking characters like the Sentry, Hulk, Wolverine, Sunfire, Polaris, Psylocke, and Gambit. But even characters that hadn't existed before showed up as his Horsemen, and they were intense. Apocalypse's final Horseman team, for example, were all largely unheard of characters, but there was Decimus Furious, who was a giant Minotaur-looking guy from way back in the Roman Empire, Jeb Lee, who can give people cancer and cause their flesh to be eaten away by playing on the drums, which is just odd. Sanjar Javid could transmit a whole spectrum of different deadly diseases via metal, and then there was Ishizumi, who could detach her jaw and send an absolutely massive and terrifying swarm of Yume beetles that could devour or dismember her target and steal their memories. Like what? And I haven't even spoken about the first Horseman, and I'm not going to.
Number 2, the Black Order. The goal of the Mad Titan Thanos is to wage war on life itself in an effort to impress the woman he loves, who also happens to be deaf. In order to help him with this goal, he has assembled a team of aliens to serve as his generals, the Black Order. Members include Corvus Glaive, who is not only a tactical genius, but immortal as long as his blade remains intact. Hela, the goddess of death, the Primordial Elder, the Challenger, who can access residual energy from the Big Bang, the telekinetic sorcerer Ebony Maw with persuasive powers, Black Swan, who can shoot optic blasts and has so much strength that she escaped from a prison designed to hold a Herald of Galactus, Black Dwarf, who is pretty much just big and strong, and Proxima Midnight, who is an expert combatant with super strength, endurance, and near invulnerability. They were memorably featured in the Infinity War movie and caused just as much, if not more, trouble for the heroes in the comics as they do in the film.
And in at number 1 is the Cabal in Secret Wars. You know, if you create a group for the sole purpose of destroying planets, you know they have got to be pretty powerful. And the Cabal, created by Namor the Submariner, are absolutely powerful. So, during Jonathan Hickman's Avengers and New Avengers, these things called incursions started to happen, orchestrated by the Beyonders. Essentially, two multiverses would crash together, destroying them both, and the focal point for that crash was the Earth itself. When the incursions started to threaten the multiverse, Namor had a different view from the rest of the Illuminati, and during the incursion with Earth 4290001, Namor destroyed that Earth to save both universes and save his Earth. Now when the next incursion presented itself right after that, the Illuminati were going to just let it happen instead of destroying an entire alternate Earth. Standing against that, Namor teamed up with Maximus the Mad of the Inhumans, and then together they freed the prisoners of the Illuminati, which included Proxima Midnight, Corvus Glaive, Terrax, the Herald of Galactus from Earth 13054, Black Swan, and the Mad Titan Thanos himself. Basically, this is like the Black Order from the last point, plus some insanely powerful additions. And they are very powerful. This group of villainous powerhouses were sanctioned by the United Nations to destroy the alternate Earths that appeared during incursions. While Namor had planned to use explosions to destroy the other Earths, Thanos, who pretty much took control of the group, led them in what was basically a complete and utter slaughter. After Namor tried to betray the group during another incursion, they instead became trapped on the other Earth and escaped to the ultimate 1610 universe, where they welcomed an evil alternate version of Reed Richards, known as the Maker, onto that team, making them even more powerful. When they survive the end of the multiverse and end up on Battleworld, this group was strong enough to face an army of Thors, but they didn't really stand a chance against God Emperor Doom.
Number 10, the Wizard and Trapster. These two would go on to become important founding members of the Frightful Four villain team, but even before that, they were teaming up together. Way back when Trapster was known simply as Pastepot Pete, these two worked together in Strange Tales in an effort to defame and defeat the Human Torch, Johnny Storm. In the end, the Torch escaped their trap and apprehended both of them, turning them in, but still, for two C or D-list villains, they came pretty close to killing the Fantastic Four hero, using Pete's pace and an airtight room that was quickly being drained of its oxygen. Also, I don't know if the Wizard's actually a C-list villain. I might actually bump him up. Also, Pastepot Pete is hard to say if you say it like 3 times fast. Number 9, Crime Syndicate. As much as I love the Crime Syndicate and think that they are an awesome team of villains, they are also pretty dysfunctional, which is why they are ranked so low on our list. However, despite the fact that they are often depicted as being at one another's throats and sneaking behind one another's backs in order to basically make sure that they themselves come out on top with the most power, they still manage to have an impressive amount of horrendous achievements, or almost achievements at least. The Crime Syndicate is still a supervillain team that proves to be extremely dangerous whenever our heroes come up against them, though they would probably be more frightening to face if they could do a little bit better at actually working together like a team instead of constantly double-crossing one another. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and comment below if you want to help us out here at the channel. I promise you it does really help, and we appreciate all your likes and comments. Thank you. Number 8, Daredevil Revenge Squad. Not the official name for this team, I don't think. This team was Typhoid Mary's group of villains. She recruited them to help her get revenge on Daredevil, and they all also had their own motives for doing him harm. All villains who had basically been slighted by the Red Devil themselves in the past. What's more, although this team up only lasted a few issues, it was actually brutally successful, with Typhoid Mary even using her Mary persona at the end of Daredevil issue 259 to kind of ensnare Matt Murdock into like letting his guard down around her. Typhoid Mary recruited the Wild Boys, Ammo, Bullet, and Bushwhacker to help her get the deed done, but insisted on taking the final moment of defeat for herself. Also, is it just me, or does Typhoid Mary look huge in this issue? She looks like so tall. I'm just like, wow, what's happening? I don't hate it. Number 7, Gotham City Sirens. Definitely one of the hottest supervillain team-ups out there in my opinion. Gotham City Sirens isn't just awesome because it's a team of powerful villains, but because it also cemented a fantastic friendship between the 3 main team members that we can always go back to, and I kind of love that. The Gotham City Sirens are Catwoman, Poison Ivy, and Harley Quinn, who sometimes also have other allies who join them in their villainous adventures. And also, let's be honest, heroic adventures, such as the Carpenter, Jenna Duffy, formerly part of the Wonderland gang. While this team up is one made up of criminals, the team of powerhouses also brought a lot of good out in each other and ended up actually performing a lot of heroic missions together despite their villainous pasts. So this might be a team up of villains, but it's also kind of a hero team in a weird way, kind of like doing a little bit of both, which I love. Number 6, Sinister Six. I didn't realize that I made the Sinister Six number 6. I just did that. That was not intentional. I'll take it, but it was not intentional, just so y'all know. While the Sinister Six definitely have their setbacks as a team, there is a reason why they are one of the favorites when it comes to supervillain groups and team-ups. I'm still waiting for them in the MCU. Please, please, Marvel, give them to me. me. With the combined strength and skills of these villains, it seems that no scheme is outside of their reach. In reality though, they usually end up in a competition to prove who is the better, which ends with them betraying one another usually, costing them their victories. But this team has still come close to defeating Spider-Man on multiple occasions, and despite their setbacks, they are a team that you can always rely on to find their way back to one another, even if it means sometimes recruiting some new members to their ranks in the process. Also, I'm all for new members being included to the ranks. There's so many good Spider-Man villains, why limit ourselves? Give me the Sinister 60. Number 5, Dr. Psycho and Riddler and Parademons. Dr. Psycho ends up allying himself with the Riddler in the Harley Quinn animated series. Originally it's Harley who wants to team up with Darkseid with her gang, but in the end she ends up surrendering her army of parademons that Darkseid supplied her with after realizing she's really doing all of this, conquering Earth to try and escape her romantic feelings for Poison Ivy, who is about to get married to Kite Man at this point in the series. Yikes, awkward. Dr. Psycho ends up becoming the big bad of the latest season in the end, with Riddler becoming his partner in crime and wielding great control over the leftover parademon army on Earth, which he has no qualms about using, unlike Harley, who's like, yeah, maybe I'm going a little too far. But yeah, Psycho's into it. A little too into it. Very much too into it. Number 4, Juggernaut and Black Tom Cassidy. These two aren't just great villains when it comes to their working relationship, they were also like fast friends and kind of best friends. I love it. Black Tom and Juggernaut have been good friends and allies since Black Tom's first full appearance in the comics in Uncanny X-Men issue 101. And I know what you guys are thinking. You're thinking, oh, but Amanda, that wasn't Black Tom's first appearance, but it was his first full appearance. So I believe his first cameo appearance was like issue 99, but don't quote me on that. Only a few issues later, they were already proving themselves to be a deadly duo as they teamed up to successfully kidnap and torment the X-Men in the hopes that this would inspire Professor Xavier to offer his own life up in exchange for his students' freedom. Unfortunately, they ended up getting tricked by Nightcrawler and ultimately were defeated. But still, this was a pretty good attempt to defeat the X-Men and Charles Xavier. Juggy's never gonna get over that. Or well, actually, yeah, he'll probably never get over it. I stand by what I said. It's gotta be hard for Juggernaut right now. Like, all of the mutants are off in Krakoa and he's not a mutant. It's challenging. Number 3, Lex Luthor and Brainiac. They were almost a complete success even in their very first team up. Almost. Together, Lex Luthor and Brainiac appeared in issue 167 of Superman, where they teamed up in a 3-part story to take down their joint foe. Their brilliance and technological know-how combined allowed them to both shrink and depower Superman, but unfortunately for them, Superman would not stand by and let himself be so easily defeated, or so well defeated, because I think that's a pretty good plan. And he found a way to escape their wrath. They honestly should have just squashed him when they had a chance, but hey, then we wouldn't have any more stories. Lex and Brainiac together, in fact, are such a fan favorite. We've even seen them in the most intense kind of team up in the DC animated universe when they merged both their minds and bodies together into one being. Like, your partnership is intense when you're just like, let's just join and be one being, but also terrifying. I don't want to fight. Lex and Brainiac merged together. Number 2, Masters of Evil. Another very iconic and successful group of supervillains who have teamed up together. This roster has also changed dramatically over the years when it comes to their members, and despite the fact that they have some members who are less popular when it comes to their notoriety, this seems to be a team that generally has some measure of success when it comes to their evil plots. The team has consisted of such members as Moonstone, Radioactive Man, Tiger Shark, Titania, and Absorbing Man, with any of the Zemos usually being seen as the most successful leaders of the team to date. But they've also had a lot of different leaders. To date, we've seen multiple incarnations of the team, and we're actually likely in, or at least approaching, the double digits, I think, at this point, when it comes to all the different rosters that we've seen. Number 1, Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. Yeah, so if you know me, you may have already guessed that they'd be at my top, but yeah, I love Poison Ivy and Harley Quinn. Never mind being, I think, some of the best supervillain team-ups out there. It's just two amazing characters. You give me two amazing villains together, I'm gonna say that it worked well. These two work together in a way that almost allows them to move from the side of villain to hero. In fact, over the last few years, as we've seen their characters develop together, they have both become more and more heroic. Though Ivy is now, of course, kind of headed back in the direction of straight up villain, currently in the comics, after her and Harley's relationship kind of fell apart in the aftermath of Heroes in Crisis. Still, for the most part, these two have brought out a lot of the best in each other, and have also managed to pull off some pretty impressive schemes along the way. I don't know whether making each other better and bringing out the hero in each other means that these two should be considered a great or an awful supervillain team up, but I personally like to see that as a win, even if it doesn't align with the villainous focus of this list. Any partnership where you bring out the best in someone, for good or for evil, should be considered one of the greatest in my books, because that's what partnerships and or relationships are all about.
At number 10 are the Titans. After the events of this year's Dark Crisis, which culminated in the disbandment of the Justice League, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Batman had a pep talk with Nightwing, wherein they basically tell him that it's time to straddle up and step up as the leader of a new team to protect the planet. The Teen Titans! I mean, no, not the Teen, just the Titans. Seems like the kiddos are all grown up now. And man, do they grow up fast. It's amazing what a lack of adjectives does to a name, right? Anywho, not only does this team bring back everybody from the original Teen Titans, including Beast Boy, Raven, Starfire, and Cyborg, but we've also got some newcomers like Wonder Girl and The Flash added into the roster. Personally, I was a huge fan of the original animated Teen Titans series, so to see the crew reunited after all these years just brings a tear to my eye. At number 9 is the New Avengers. The New Avengers roster this year is more stacked than it's ever been. It's pretty much the dream team. We've got, obviously, Tony Stark's Iron Man, Thor, Vision, T'Challa's Black Panther, Scarlet Witch, Sam Wilson's Captain America with the wings and everything, and the OP powerhouse of the group herself, Captain Marvel. Now, obviously, we're missing a few key players here, namely the non-powered powerhouses, those being Hawkeye and Black Widow. Also, the OG Cap is missing, who's actually still alive in this narrative. And also, most notably, our big green boy is missing. Now, it seems like the theme here seems to be only heroes who can fly are allowed into this club, with the exception of T'Challa, who's got his own bat planes. Panther planes? Anywho, even though we're missing the green Goliath this time around, we've still got all kinds of muscle with this Avengers lineup. If you're enjoying the video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. It helps us get our video boosted to the algorithm, get seen by more people, and just all around, this is a nice thing to do, so go ahead, do that. At number 8 are the Super Twins. Meet Ortho Ra and Uzul Ra, descendants of an offshoot of Kryptonians called Phalosians. Hope I said that right. Now, these siblings had a tough start. See, the Phalosians were already an alienated race, having been exiled from Krypton and settling on a new homeworld called New Phalosia. Now, sometime later, their folks and older brother, let's say, got eliminated when World attacked the planet, leaving the twins enslaved and isolated from their family. Now, life got really tough for them after that. They wound up living in cells under an arena, part of a race enslaved by Warzone culture. The Warlord culture had brainwashed them into thinking that cruelty was strength and kindness was weakness. But now things took a turn when Mongol, the big boss, ordered the two siblings to fight each other to the death. Now they refused, but luckily enough, Superman swooped in to save the day. Long story short, teaching them that real strength comes from protecting others. Now after a crazy breakout and some heroic deeds, eventually they landed on Earth, where Lois Lane and Clark Kent took them in, and voila, these super twins were born. Life on Earth was a bit tricky, especially for Ortho, but they're learning the ropes and becoming quite the heroes. At number 7 is the Maker's Council. Now, I know the Maker is typically seen as an evil Reed Richards, but the Maker's gang in this one has beef with Dr. Doom and Kang the Conqueror, so let's just say that this team is morally ambiguous, to say the least. I mean, the Maker here is pretty dark, but I mean, generally speaking, he's got humanity's best interest at heart, even if it comes at seriously grave cost. Anywho, in this reality, the world is split into 7 super states, and after conducting a variety of tests with iterations of experimental societies within his base of operations, the Maker grew convinced that enduring peace on Earth was unattainable due to humans' inherent nature. Yeah, I get it, dude. We're all a bunch of monkeys. As a result, he established a secret council composing of the leaders of each of the 7 territories, and together, they manipulated conflicts and alliances among their nations to unite their respective populations. So in the present day, the Eurasian Republic served as the designated rogue state that unified the other territories as a common foe, with the intention for this role to be rotated between each territory over time. So basically, it's George Orwell's 1984, except instead of Big Brother, it's the Maker. Pretty bleak, but hey, I guess if peace is unattainable, then controlled everlasting war is the next best thing? I don't know. At number 6 is the 13. Back in the 1940s, these guys were a mix of good and bad guys doing some morally ambiguous things. But then, bam! Time got all wonky thanks to Barry Allen and Dr. Manhattan messing around, and these 13 got wiped away from history. Now, lucky for them, the Time Masters stashed them away in these kind of snooze pods to keep them safe. But fast forward a little bit, and a dude named Per Degaton muddles things up again, and these pods go kaput. These 13 peeps pop back into history before everything's completely fixed. Now, the kicker here is that 8 of them were sidekicks to the OG heroes from the Golden Age. They got snatched up by Pathfinder and chucked onto, get this, Orphan Island, a place somehow stuck outside of regular time. Then there was some epic showdown shenanigans. They'd team up with Stargirl, Red Arrow, Hourman, and beat the bad guys. But since they can't go back home to their old tie lines, Hourman zaps them to the present, and they become the Young Justice Society. At number 5 are the Thunderbolts. Not to be confused with the original team put together by Baron Zemo, this new squad emerged after the Outer Circle got taken down. When Bucky Barnes, who got all the Outer Circle secrets, teamed up with a person called Contessa Valentina Alguera de Fontaine, that's a name. But guess what? She wasn't the real one, she was actually a fake. And they decided to join forces and make a gang called the Thunderbolts to crush the Red Skull and his whole operation. The crew got bigger when they got on board the Destroyer and the Red Guardian for a mission to wreck Red Skull's base in Argentina. And long story short, they won, they took out the Red Skull's main body, and basically just wrecked the whole setup. At number 4 are the Super Kids. So the reason this team got together was because apparently they were too young to join the Teen Titans. It's definitely saying a lot. Now, their story is pretty wild. It all began when some bad guys tried to mess with time, trying to erase 2 of the core members, Animal Girl, and the Flash Twins before they could become heroes. But guess what? Backfired big time. Instead of erasing them, it brought them face to face with their future teammates, Robin and Superboy. And just like that, Super Kids were born. So let's break it down. We've got Animal Girl, also known as Maxine Baker, with her animal powers. Then there's Jai West as Surge and Ivory West as Thunderheart, the speedy Flash Twins. And of course, Robin and Superboy rounding out the squad. At number 3 is the Spider Society. There was no way I was going to make a video about new superhero teams without bringing up an entire collection of my favorite hero from across the multiverse, which made its debut in this year's Across the Spider-Verse movie. The Spider-Verse Society is led by Miguel O'Hara, aka Spider-Man 2099, with this movie being his first cinematic debut. In fact, we got all kinds of Spider-Men who we were praying would make it to the big screen one day, from classics like Ben Reilly, Spider-Man's clone from the Clone Saga, to more obscure ones like Peter Parked Car. Love that. After surviving a universe-ending event, Miguel went around picking up Spideys from all over, their mission being to preserve the multiverse from any conceivable threat, all convening at Spider HQ on Earth 928, to which they travel to using their trusty little dimension-hopping watches. Because Spidey's a genius, don't forget. At number 2 is the Blood Syndicate. The Blood Syndicate, made up of former gang members from Dakota City, is no ordinary super team. They banded together to take down a menacing villain and then protect their turf, Paris Island. Each member had their own rough past, hailing from different gangs and areas of the city. But when this villain threatened to rule the criminal underworld with violence, these superhumans united against him. In their first standoff, the Blood Syndicate really did not do justice. They fought individually instead of working as a team, leading to their quick defeat and separation. However, Flashback, one of their own, took a bold step at traveling back in time to warn them about their impending loss. Now with this crucial knowledge, the Syndicate regrouped, launching a fierce coordinated attack, and this time they fought as a team, leaving the villain defenseless. Fate immobilized him, and Tech-9 delivered the final blow, putting an end to the threat once and for all. And coming in at number 1 are the Dark X-Men, who are back again this year. Madeline Pryor's new Dark X-Men are about to show no mercy, and it's gotta be awesome. Along with the Goblin Queen herself, we've also got Maggot, Archangel, Gambit, Gimmick, Azrael, M-Plate, Zero, and Havoc. Basically a dream team of the X-Men's most lethal heroes. So after the massive party called the Hellfire Gala, Madeline Pryor, who's got some history with the X-Men, leads this new strike team featuring some prominent OG X-Men members like Havoc and Gambit, who are back, but they've never teamed up like this before under such dire circumstances. Now, without giving too much away, this team is set to be among the X-Men's brutal incarnations. I mean, just look at the opening sequence of the first issue of this comic series with Madeline Pryor envisioning her global takeover. It's dark. To say it's dark is an understatement.
Number 10. Sisterhood of the Sleight Hand. Sisterhood of the Sleight Hand has only made a few appearances in the comics, so they're not as much of a superhero team as they are, I guess, a collective of witches, but I feel like most of the witches are good among them, or at least neutral, so I figured it would be safe to count them. Also, I believe in general as a group they're a force of good, so even those that are part of the group that aren't as good, the whole group is supposed to be good, okay? Prominent, but still somewhat obscure members include Tracy 13, Enchantress, Manitou Dawn, and Witchfire. I love Witchfire. When will I get my Witchfire series? And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not click that subscribe button so you don't miss out on any good old nerdy content? I know there's a lot of people out there that don't subscribe, so if that's you, I'm talking to you. Number 9. Justice League Dark. Everyone's heard of the Justice League, but who the heck is Justice League Dark? And why do they sound like they're a supervillain team? Well, while their name might make them sound like they are up to no good, the opposite could not actually be more true. They are a more covert division of the Justice League, actually, an offshoot that primarily works in the shadows to help stop more unseen magic threats. In fact, when they saved the universe from Hecate's influence, the Justice League wasn't even aware of what was going on at the time, because Hecate just didn't want the Justice League to be aware of her, so they simply just weren't. And that was a threat to the entire universe, friends. They deal with threats that the Justice League honestly might be ill-equipped to face, and one of their members is actually a core member of the JLA team, Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman initially acts as a team leader, and the team has included Zatanna, John Constantine, Detective Chimp, Dr. Fates, both Khalid Nazur, and also for a little while Kent Nelson, Madame Xanadu, Animal Man, Dead Man, Ragman, all the men, really, Etrigan and Jason Blood, and a slew of others who are more magically inclined. It's a big list, but that's some of them. Number 8. Exiles. The Exiles are probably the most potentially well-known of the ones that I've listed here, but if you are new to comics or more of a casual fan, this one for you will probably be something that you don't know about, which is why I put it here, because I want you to know. For those who don't know the Exiles, they're a super cool team with a long ongoing series. They're actually a multiversal superhero team made up of various alternate versions of superheroes from across the multiverse. Because anyone from any other Earth can be a member of the team, there are a lot of people who have been on the roster over the years, members who have come and gone, or even died during their time on the team. The very first team to appear though in Exiles, the first roster that appeared in Exiles Volume 1, Issue Number 1 out of 2001, a lot of ones, featured a slew of alternate reality versions of characters, including an alternate version of Blink from Age of Apocalypse reality Earth number 295, Nocturne, the daughter of Scarlet Witch and Nightcrawler in an alternate reality, Thunderbird of Earth 1100, Mimic of Earth 12, an alternate version of everyone's favorite fun-loving mutant Morph from Earth 1081, and an alternate version of Magneto simply known as Magnus from Earth 27. So many cool multiverse folks. Number 7. Blue Lanterns. You've heard of Green Lanterns, maybe you've even heard of Yellow Lanterns or Red Lanterns or Black Lanterns, but how about Blue Lanterns? Blue Lanterns have only made a few appearances in the new continuity, and even before that, during the New Earth days of DC, they weren't necessarily the most frequent to appear. Mainly, I feel like people know Green Lanterns, whose color represents willpower. To be a Green Lantern, you must be strong in will. To be a Blue Lantern though, you must be full of hope, strong in hope. If Green Lanterns are like the intergalactic police, Blue Lanterns are kind of like, I guess, the therapists or the peacekeepers, or maybe the priests. That's accurate based on their naming. They have long been allies to the Green Lanterns, and their powers actually provide a boost to fellow Green Lanterns when they are nearby. This is because their whole focus is on belief and hope, having faith in those around them. As such, many of their names start with titles like Saint, Sister, or Brother. Number 6. Hellions. While they were recent, the fact remains that the Hellions were a pretty short-lived team. Now, if you're new to the channel, first of all, hello, welcome in, happy to have you. As I said, click the subscribe. And also, you probably aren't familiar with the Hellions. Those who have been here for a while, regardless of whether they read the book or not, will know the team I'm talking about though, because I do like to talk about them. Sure, there might be many out there who know of Emma Frost's Hellions team in their striking pink suits, but how many know about Nathaniel Essex, aka Mr. Sinister's Hellions team? Sounds like it should be a villain team again, right? Well, oddly enough, it isn't. This team was made up of the rejected members of Krakoan Mutant Society, who were put together on their own team with the hope of rehabilitating the mutants and helping them to find a place in society, while also allowing more put together mutants to keep a kind of a closer eye on them, I guess. Minus Mr. Sinister, who they did put in charge of this team for some reason. Goodness. This was also at a time where pretty much all mutants were kind of considered to be like good. However, I still feel like letting Sinister run this team was a huge oversight. That is part of the reason that I wanted to read the series though, and I was honestly not disappointed with this series. The team includes Quanon as Psylocke, Havoc, Wildchild, Nanny, Orphan Maker, John Greycrow, and former Hellion Empath. The team only lasted as long as their series, and afterward they disbanded, and it was really sad. Number 5. Capes Inc. Capes Inc. is another superhero team from the same world as Invincible. In fact, as early on as issue number 8 of the Invincible series, you can see some of their members featured in the background. Not only that, but they also ended up getting their own spin-off comic as well, although I believe it only lasted like a few issues, 3 I think to be exact. The series centered initially around Bolt, who welcomes a new recruit to the team as his partner. The team is more like a business and kind of seems to operate like a superpowered police station or office. It's like Bolt has this partner and they drive around and like fight crime. People even get paid and everything. Kid Thor is the new kid in town who ends up joining with Bolt. Bolt, we learned, originally actually wanted to be known as Black Samson, but obviously that name was already taken by the Guardians of the Globe hero. Oh man, there's just so many little bits in this that are pretty hilarious. Number 4. A-Force. A-Force is a team that I love, but not one that many people talk about, I find. I feel like a lot of people forget that this happened. It's probably because, you know, we haven't seen A-Force in some time. But when they were around, they were pretty great, but also quite short-lived. Even more so than the Hellions. A-Force at least appeared in a few other comics other than their own series, but they had a considerably shorter run for their own series, despite their team honestly being really stacked and it sounding like, I don't know, just sounded like a really great team. I'm surprised it didn't go longer. Members included She-Hulk, who led the team, Captain Marvel, Dazzler, an alternate reality version of Dazzler who is Thor, Nico Minoru, Singularity, and Queen Medusa. Number 3. God Squad. God Squad was one that I was hoping to see a nod to in Thor Love and Thunder. I was hoping that when we went to Olympus, we might get a peek at some version of this team. Maybe not one for one, but it could have been cool to see the team acknowledged with maybe even a different take on it. I just really love the name, God Squad. This was a group of heroes and gods who were assembled to fight against the Skrull Pantheon, brought together by Athena. The team included Hercules as leader, Circe and Ajax of the Eternals, Thor, Silver Surfer, Galactus, Venus, Amadeus Cho, Snowbird, what would that hero be? Just someone that snowboards, I guess. Amadeus Cho, Snowbird, Amatsu Mikaboshi, and Adam. Number 2. Justice League Queer. Justice League Queer has made fewer appearances than I have fingers on this here hand. They're less of a superhero group and more of a support group for other prominent superheroes who are queer. And honestly, I kinda love that. Although I'm sure they do still team up and fight crime. But they're also mainly about advocating for LGBTQIA+ rights. This team made their first appearance in the 2021 issue of DC Pride. They also popped up in 2023 DC Pride and in a holiday special as well. The team or group is led by Extraño, a powerful magic-based superhero who was the first out and proud Soup. He created the group to make sure others out there never felt alone as he had initially, and I love it. Number 1. 6. You might have heard of the Krakoan 5, but do you know of the Six. The Six, or just Six, are a team of primarily teleportation-based mutant heroes who were recruited by Abigail Brand to be part of her new mutant-based sword team, when that was a thing. While the team is called the Six, there are actually more than 6 members. The Six refers to the core members who are the teleportation-based mutants, while the other members are also integral to the mission statement of the team, which is all about further expansion and exploration of the possibilities of mutant technology. The team has included Abigail Brand, Magneto, Manifold, Armor, Cora of the Burning Heart, WizKid, Peeper, Fabian Cortez, Risque, Gateway, Lila Cheney, Blink, Amelia Vought, and Vanisher. The team also has backup members on call in case they need to swap folks out as well, especially for teleporters. Which, to be fair, there are a lot of mutant teleporters, so that makes sense.
At number 10 is Carnage and the Joker. Sounds like absolute chaos. As the Marvel and DC universes converged, the plot unfolded with a certain unnaturalness as Dr. Cassandra Breyer's audacious attempt to pacify these two malevolent menaces using microchips took an ominous turn when Carnage, the symbiote psychopath, effortlessly short-circuited the implant. Meanwhile, the Joker, not to be outdone, suffered a similar fate. This nightmarish duo then embarked on an unaliving spree with their unholy union a brief affair. However, there was a clash between them, driven by differing philosophies on eliminating people, which culminated in an epic showdown with Batman and Spider-Man. You see, Joker was all about having a plan, and Carnage was like, screw that, let's just cause chaos, and apparently, their different philosophies didn't coalesce. Carnage and the Joker's inability to cooperate, while expected, was a fortunate twist, preventing unimaginable catastrophe. I mean, had these two serial unalivers coordinated, countless lives would have been lost to their chaotic malevolence. At number 9 is the Leader and the One Below All. Comic world has witnessed some spine-tingling team-ups, but few saw the nightmarish alliance between the Hulk's arch-nemesis, the Leader, and the malevolent cosmic entity known as the One Below All. The Jade Giant, who's known for smashing his way through the MCU, has transformed into a true horror icon in the comics thanks to the masterful storytelling in Immortal Hulk. Enter the One Below All, which is a sinister, demonic force that Samuel Stearns, the brilliant but deranged leader, willingly submits to. His aim is to obliterate not only the Hulk, but the entire world, morphing it into a grotesque Cronenberg-esque nightmare. The unholy partnership has taken the Hulk's adversaries to a whole new level of terror, creating a chilling narrative that keeps fans on the edge of their seats. If you're enjoying this video so far, you can support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. At number 8 is the Joker and the Violator. Okay, a Carnage and Joker crossover was cool and all, but how about the Joker working with a literal demon clown from Spawn, if you haven't guessed? Violator, an immortal servant of Satan with inhuman strength and fire-breathing abilities, now allies himself with the Joker in a multiverse-shaking partnership. Batman and Spawn, facing the Court of Owls, reluctantly seek Joker's help, only to discover that they've fallen into a trap orchestrated by the Joker and the Violator. The history of the Joker's unholy alliance suggests likely a monstrous transformation later down the road, but betrayal could also be on the horizon. As the two most feared clowns in comics unite, the questions arise about Joker's transformation under the Violator's influence and his ultimate strategy against such a potent source of evil. At number 7 are the Marvel Zombies. In the twisted Marvel Zombies universe, where heroes hunger for the flesh of the living, an unexpected and mind-boggling team unfolded. You see, Galactus, the cosmic devourer of worlds, was rendered into a grotesque figure, a far cry from his formidable 616 incarnation. You see, in this nightmarish reality, Galactus manifested as a corporeal being which is vulnerable to the insatiable appetites of the zombie Avengers. It's kind of weird because these undead mortals eventually feast upon a cosmic entity known for its indomitable might. While it's explained that the Galactus of Earth 2149 was crafted from flesh, a startling departure from what we're used to. Because as he's depicted in 616, Galactus' true form isn't a physical body, but rather abstract energy. The big dude in a funny suit we see is just what our minds can comprehend, like how Pennywise is actually a cosmic spider. So anyway, Mark Millar's zombie series introduced this shocking image of the zombies eating Galactus, leaving subsequent writers little choice but follow suit. As the zombie Avengers devoured Galactus, they unwittingly inherited his purpose, Comics, setting off a multiversal buffet until the cosmic meal dwindled and the cosmic power ran out, returning them to their ravenous roots. At number 6 are the Secret Six, a team once heralded as heroes back in the 60s, but slowly became an unexpected amalgamation of villainy that took the comic world by surprise. Unlike your run-of-the-mill baddie alliances, this group incorporated a diverse roster with Deadshot, Bane, and Harley Quinn, and even the notorious Joker claiming membership. But what's truly shocking is the mysterious puppeteer known as Mockingbird. It's like discovering that Batman has been secretly pulling the strings for the Joker all along. The revelation that the Riddler or Lex Luthor also had their hands in the mix is sort of like unearthing the Pandora's box of villainy. These unexpected team-ups redefine the very essence of villainy and heroism, demonstrating that in the realm of comics, the line between good and evil can blur in the most spine-chilling ways. Speaking of which, at number 5 is Norman Osborn's Dark Avengers. Spider-Man's most terrifying villain is allowed to form his own Avengers? Now, that's scary. Following the Skrull invasion, Osborn seized control of S.H.I.E.L.D., manipulating them and the Thunderbolts to create his own sinister version of the Avengers under the guise of the Hammer Agency. What makes this alliance truly spine-chilling is the unsettling cast of heroes, quote-unquote, that Osborn assembled. Bullseye is posed as Hawkeye, Venom as Spider-Man, and Moonstone as Miss Marvel, each of them concealing their secretly malevolent intentions. Ares and Sentry, once heroes, found themselves tainted by their affiliation with Osborn's dark agenda. Yet, the most disturbing transformation lay in Daken, who assumed the mantle of Wolverine, and Noh-Varr, who became Captain Marvel. Norman himself adopted the Iron Patriot suit, twisting patriotism into something nightmarish. At number 4 is Magneto and Red Skull. In the convoluted tapestry of comic book alliances, the pairing of Red Skull and Magneto is nothing short of a paradoxical enigma. Two diametrically opposed figures, their shared history is a testament to the complexity in the Marvel Universe. Their initial encounter during the Acts of Vengeance storyline was marked by Magneto's seething contempt for the embodiment of the evil that Red Skull represents. This animosity is well-founded, considering Magneto's harrowing experiences during the event from World War II, which shall not be named. Yet, as the narrative threats of Marvel Comics tend to weave, we find Magneto standing shoulder to shoulder with the very antagonist he once despised. In Deadpool Eliminates the Marvel Universe again, and in Old Man Logan, these universes both witnessed Magneto's unsettling alliance with Red Skull as they collaborated to further their nefarious ambition. This unlikely partnership serves as a testament to the ever-shifting alliances and allegiances and the moral ambiguities that define the Marvel Universe, where heroes and villains dance on a precarious tightrope of alliances and rivalry. At number 3, the Crime Master and Toxin. Let's take a look at the shocking collaboration between Flash Thompson, known as Agent Venom, and the notorious Crime Master during the Agent Venom storyline. See, at first glance, it seemed like an ordinary showdown between hero and villain, but beneath the surface, a sinister plot was unfolding. The Crime Master, the ever-cunning mastermind, developed a plan that transcended mere villainy. See, he coerced Eddie Brock, the former Venom, into joining his malevolent cause. However, his ambition didn't stop there. Using the formidable symbiote Toxin, the Crime Master forcibly merged it with Eddie, creating an unholy alliance. Together with the villains, they embarked on a campaign of terror, targeting not just Agent Venom, but also his loved one, revealing a level of malevolence that left readers in complete shock. At number 2 is Judge Joker. Now, the scariest villain team-ups often emerge when you least expect them, like when the Joker, infamous for his lack of superpowers, ventured beyond his universe. In the Batman/Judge Dredd's, Joker wields unimaginable powers after crossing into Judge Dredd's realm via a multiversal teleportation belt. He aids Judge Unalive, a malevolent entity seeking to annihilate all life across the multiverse. In return, Judge Unalive imparts sinister abilities upon Joker, transforming him into another dark judge. Joker's newfound power allows him to make heads explode with his laughter, a grotesque and quite fitting ability. Each dark judge gains powers tied to their obsessions, making Joker's lethal laughter a darkly logical choice. He becomes immortal in this form, impervious to harm. However, the Joker's return to his original self is a twist in itself. See, if he had retained these abilities, he'd be unstoppable amidst even DC's mightiest heroes. While it's disappointing for the Clown Prince of Crime, his cinematic presence would dwindle with these R-rated powers, a reminder that sometimes unexpected alliances lead to frankly horrifying outcomes. And at number 1 is the Injustice League. The Injustice League, a formidable gathering of DC's most notorious and evildoers, is typically led by the brilliant Lex Luthor, featuring iconic antagonists like the Joker, Deathstroke, Black Manta, Cheetah, and Sinestro. The Injustice League is a force to be reckoned with. However, their effectiveness as a team pales in comparison to their individual endeavors, primarily due to the Justice League's seamless teamwork. Interestingly, for those seeking the Legion of Doom, think of it as a rebranding of the Injustice League. The Super Friends are essentially mirrored in the Justice League, sharing many members and embodying similar dynamics. And so much of what applies to the Injustice League also holds true for the Legion of Doom as well.
Coming in at number 10 today is the Asgardians of the Galaxy. The Guardians of the Galaxy never used to be the most popular team until the MCU brought them to theaters, and now almost everyone knows of the Guardians. But what most people don't know about is the Asgardians of the Galaxy. The Asgardians of the Galaxy were a team of Asgardian and Earthbound Asgardian related misfits assembled by the hero Angela secretly on behalf of Kid Loki. The team consisted of Thunderstrike, aka Kevin Masterson, the son of the original Eric Masterson Thunderstrike, who once stood in for Thor in the 90s, Scourge the Executioner, the guy obsessed with Enchantress, Throg, yes, that is the frog version of Thor, who is normally chilling out on a lily pad in Central Park, and Valkyrie, along with her human host Annabelle Riggs. Now, pulled together in a tie-in to the 2018 Infinity Wars event, their objective was to help Kid Loki retrieve the Naglfar beacon in anticipation of the upcoming War of the Realms waged by Malekith the Accursed. This put them into conflict with Nebula, who was using the beacon to lead an army of undead gods to bring about another Ragnarok. And if that sounds awesome, it's because it is.
And friends, before we move on to our next spot on this list, if you love what we do here at Top 10 Nerd, why not consider clicking that subscribe button? Number 9, Stormwatch. I just found out this today, but apparently when it comes to DC, there are actually a few different teams known as Stormwatch. Did you know that? One of them is actually a magic-based team, which is probably even less known than the one I'm going to talk about. If we get to a part 3, I'll tell you about that one. However, I figured Stormwatch from Wildstorm was still less known in comparison to stuff like, you know, the Justice League, when we're talking DC. Who is Stormwatch in the Wildstorm universe before they came to DC? Well, initially this was a team created by Jim Lee under his imprint, where he set out to create his own characters, which is different from what happens when you as a creator make things for DC and Marvel, where they basically retain the rights to everything you make. For Jim Lee, this proved to be a profitable choice, as DC even later offered to buy Wildstorm from him. So he not only got to do, you know, everything on his own, which he got to own, but then also due to Wildstorm's success, he also got to sell the imprint back to DC after and make money on that deal, which is pretty great. That's some of the historical context for Stormwatch in regards to the imprint, but in regards to the canon history for this team, Stormwatch was initially brought together to basically combat alien incursions. The team, however, has been disbanded and reformed multiple times, and they've also been known as a different name, one that might even be on this list. Prominent members have included Backlash, Jackson King, Jenny Sparks, Henry Bendix, Winter, multiple versions of Diva, Fahrenheit, Apollo, Midnighter, Synergy, Nautica, and Deathblow, to name a few. Later on, this team would be rebranded as something else that we'll talk about in a bit.
Number 8, the Champions of Los Angeles. The Champions were the first West Coast-based superhero team. They formed like all great superhero teams do, with several heroes happening to just meet by chance against one great threat. In this case, that threat took the form of the Greek god of death, Pluto. The group consisted of 2 former X-Men, Angel and Iceman, the Greek god of strength Hercules, who I swear is underappreciated, Johnny Blaze, the original Ghost Rider, and the Russian spy Black Widow, who became this team's leader. After defeating Pluto, the Champions of Los Angeles, or just the Champions, decided to stick together as a team. Warren Worthington III, aka Angel, was the wealth behind the team. They bought their own Quinjet and named it the Champ Jet, which I find hilarious because over time, the members of this team started to become embarrassed by the team, with both Iceman and Angel calling it an embarrassment and a nightmare because they had no idea what they were doing, apparently. But still, they had a few more adventures working with X-Force, and they had some additions to the roster with Black Goliath, who aided the team in scientific endeavors from time to time, and another Russian female hero, Darkstar, who was originally there to capture Black Widow, but changed sides instead.
Number 7, Avengers. I know what you're thinking. Amanda, what? I know the Avengers. How could you not know the Avengers in 2023? Well, it's possible that you're not thinking of the same Avengers team that I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of the Avengers from Earth 1610, the original Ultimates reality. You see, while the Avengers did actually exist there, this team was actually very different from the version that we know that hails from the MCU or even the comics main reality of Earth 616. The Avengers team here was kind of treated more like a version of the Suicide Squad. They only made about 23 appearances total, and the roster was very different from what you'd be used to when you think of the mainstay Avengers in the main continuity. I mean, some of the same names, but totally different people. The team roster has included Black Widow, but this Black Widow was Monica Chang, the ex-wife of Nick Fury, Gregory Stark, Tony's evil twin brother in this reality, the Punisher, Nick Fury, Red Wasp, Tyrone Cash, a super interesting character, you should look him up, an evil version of Spider-Man created by Gregory Stark in a lab known as the Spider, an imitation of Thor known as Perun, Hawkeye, and War Machine. Basically, they're kind of like a rougher imitation Avengers.
Number 6. The Legion of Monsters. The Legion of Monsters is a team of monster-like characters who have vowed to protect other monsters like them that were hunted down to be killed or couldn't defend themselves. The team has consisted of characters like Shiklah, Werewolf by Night, Ghost Rider, Zombie, Elsa Bloodstone, Frankenstein's monster, Man-Thing, Morbius, Satana, the Living Mummy, and Mamphibian, among others. Now, the original Legion of Monsters were united by chance when they each happened to investigate the appearance of a strange benevolent being called the Starseed, who came crashing to Earth. Starseed attempted to aid the monsters and cure them of their forms, even though, being monsters, they couldn't control themselves and attacked Starseed. Because of the fear they caused him, when Man-Thing touched him, he bit the dust, in Marvel Premiere number 28 from November 1975. One of the Legion's many missions included saving remaining monsters from the Hunter of Monster Special Force. They sent the monsters into the Morlock tunnels and started a monster metropolis where the monsters could live in peace. They are the group that saved Frank Castle the Punisher and turned him into Frankencastle.
Number 5. Teenage Kicks. You may have heard of this one thanks to the popular streaming series The Boys. It was the team that Popclaw from season 1 was on when she was a kid. The team is a parody of DC's Teen Titans and is a teenage superhero-based team that was managed by Vought International. In the comics, they have a somewhat larger role in the story, but are still considered pretty much minor antagonists.
Number 4. The Authority. The Authority is a team that not a ton of people know about now. They were really popular and cool, but this team is going to be joining the DCEU under James Gunn's reboot. So before everyone and their moms hears about them, let's talk about them here. Now, for starters, the Authorities are not strictly a DC team. They are part of the Wildstorm universe of Earth 30, which we did talk about earlier, I believe. Here, metahumans are a bit more in control. They have no qualms against removing human political leadership if they engage in initiatives that harm others. Now, the initial roster consisted of hyper-skilled tactician Midnighter, who is basically like insane Batman, the Superman-esque solar-fueled powerhouse Apollo, the engineer whose blood consists of microscopic nanites, the winged warrior woman Swift, Jack Hawksmoor, who draws superhuman abilities from cities, and the Doctor, a shaman connected to the energies of the Earth. Leading them was Jenny Sparks, the electrically powered spirit of the 20th century. Now, they came together to protect the world by any means necessary, and they proved that. The Authority often used lethal measures to defeat their enemies and weren't above causing collateral damage to do so. They were actually the basis behind the evil supervillain team, the Elite, that Superman faced in What's So Funny in Truth, Justice, and the American Way. But funnily enough, Superman even had his own version of the Authority team for a time.
Number 3. Unofficial Dark X-Men. Well, the Dark X-Men were more of a thing during Norman Osborn's time in charge of the organization which replaced S.H.I.E.L.D., which he named Hammer during Dark Reign. There is also a new team of Dark X-Men that have appeared on the scene. Watch out, sound the alarms, new Dark X-Men. Although in the comics, they just go by the name of X-Men. There's no dark. But editorially, and in regards to the series they're featured in, they're known as the Dark X-Men, which is why I'm giving that name to them unofficially. This team is also known as the Limbo-based X-Men, as their team leader is Madeline Pryor, the Goblin Queen, Jean Grey's once evil clone, and the current ruler of Limbo. Members include a Zero-possessed Albert, I love Albert, Emplate, Gambit, Feint, Havoc, Marrow, and Archangel. Although I think Archangel's no longer on the team right now.
Number 2. The Power Pack. The Power Pack were the 4 of Dr. James Power and Margaret Power. Now their father, James, was in the process of creating an antimatter reactor that would supply the planet with clean energy, but also could potentially destroy the planet as well. On the night before the reactor was going to be tested, the 4 Power kids, Alex, Julie, Jack, and Katie, had a run-in with Alefire Whitemane, aka Whitey, who was a member of the alien race known as the Chimelians, and he had crash landed not too far from the Powers' home and was not doing too hot. He told the kids about another alien race known as the Snarks, who were after the antimatter technology in order to destroy other planets. Now as he passed away, he bestowed powers on the 4 kids. Alex became Zero G with the power to manipulate gravity, Julie became Light Speed with the powers of flight and acceleration, Jack became Mass Master with the ability to control the density of the molecules of his own body, and Katie became Energizer with the ability to disintegrate an object and absorb the released energy into herself, using it to project power balls of force from her chest. Other than facing Emperor Jakal and the Snark species that he commanded, the Power Pack have teamed up with all kinds of heroes like Spider-Man, the X-Men, Cloak and Dagger, Devil Dinosaur, Gwenpool, Moon Girl, and Franklin and Valeria Richards in the Future Foundation.
Number 1. Queen's Vengeance. Queen's Vengeance is a reality-warped version of the Avengers. This team was created when Morgan Le Fay ended up attacking the Avengers. As they prepared to strike back against her, Morgan Le Fay warped reality and ended up making the Avengers into members of her court, many of them becoming part of her trusted guard, the Queen's Vengeance, because reality was warped so that it was like basically the Middle Ages. The only member of the Avengers who was not transformed by the reality warp was Scarlet Witch, who actually could not be controlled this way. Wanda was held as a prisoner as such in Morgan Le Fay's dungeon, but managed to use her powers to reach out to her fellow Avengers, breaking the spell over Captain America's mind. Cap then sought out the other members of the team, and they managed to all wake up and rebel against Morgan Le Fay, reverting reality back to normal.
At number 10 are the New Warriors. By the way, all of my entries today are suggested by you guys in the comments, so this one was suggested by Kevin Murray 8803 and TND Atkinson, so thank you both. The New Warriors were a cool gang of teenage superheroes in the 90s who aren't super well known despite literally being the catalyst for the events of Civil War. See, in Marvel, teen teams aren't as common as in some other superhero universes, especially if they're not made up of mutants. But the New Warriors stood out. They had Night Thrasher, Nova, Speedball, Namorita, Marvel Boy / Justice, Firestar, Rage, and the Silhouette, a bunch of powerful teens doing superhero stuff. People liked them a lot at first. The team had a bunch of awesome characters with unique powers, but later on, things didn't go super well for them. They tried to reboot the group as teen superheroes shooting a reality TV show. The reality show incarnation of the team was the catalyst in the superhero Civil War because in a battle with a group of supervillains while filming season 2 of their TV show, the supervillain Nitro exploded, unaliving most of the team and hundreds of civilians. This was the event that ignited the Superhero Restriction Act and pitted heroes against each other, and in turn paving the way for the Skrulls' secret invasion. At number 9 is the Justice Machine. Thank you to Carbon Dragon for suggesting this one. The Justice Machine is the superhero group of elite law enforcements from another world, Georwell, which initially sounds like this futuristic all-tech wonderland, kind of like Star Trek vibes. But if the name of the planet didn't sound any alarms, it's probably because you haven't read any George Orwell. No, Orwell didn't write this comic, but the world of Jorwell, which is initially presented as a utopia, actually takes a lot of inspiration from Orwell's 1984 novel. Think maximum government control, surveillance, and all kinds of propaganda. So after the team does a mission on Earth and learns what actual freedom is like, they start to second guess and realize that they've actually been working for the bad guys all along. Now we've got Challenger the leader, kind of like a Captain America type of strategist despite his declining age. Then there's Blazer, which got flames in flight, Titan, who can grow 30 feet tall, Diviner with this freaky digital mind connection thing, and she's also Challenger's ex. We got Tailsman, who's altering luck and probability, and lastly Demon, who's a martial arts and acrobatics expert. Pretty top-notch team. If you're enjoying the video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing the notification bell. At number 8 are the Champions of Los Angeles, suggested by Rodney Lindsay 849. For a Marvel team I've never heard of, this team is stupendously stacked. Like, even the Avengers ain't got nothing on the Champions of LA. Just check out this roster, okay? We've got Black Widow, Angel, Hercules, Ghost Rider, and freaking Iceman. Are you kidding me? That's like the fantasy superhero dream team right there. Air. Like seriously, these guys together are no joke. Hell, the first baddie they took on, and thus the reason for their collaboration in their first place, was to team up against Pluto, the literal Greek god of death. Like Pluto! Seriously, the OG Avengers initially teamed up to fight the Hulk and then Loki, so to say that this team isn't at least on par with the Avengers would be doing them a great disservice. Literally the only thing this team is missing is a Spider-Man. At number 7 is the Legion of Substitute Heroes, recommended by Bob Mathis Friedman 6742 and Aaron Malver 7452. These dudes were not the A-team but the backup squad called the Legion of Substitute Heroes, which are a coalition of heroes who had been rejected from joining the Legion of Superheroes because their powers just didn't quite cut it. We're talking Polar Boy, Night Girl, Stone Boy, Fire Lad, and Chlorophyll Kid. Some kind of lame names, but they've all got some unique and albeit not so flashy abilities. Now, rejected but determined, they decided to form their own superhuman team. The group of rejects were finally able to prove themselves when Planet Man invaded Earth, as the main legion was off in space fighting against robot ships. These underdogs stepped in and saved the day, stopping the Planet Man invasion. And as it turns out, Captain Freeze had been behind all of this, using the androids and the Planet Man to overwhelm and distract the legion while he tried to steal the mighty Shrink Ray. Now Night Girl caught him in the act, and that planet went kaput. Despite starting undercover, the subs eventually got props from the real Legion. Sometimes being the backup team isn't so bad, as they proved themselves as legit heroes. At number 6 is the Cyber Force. Thank you to Kevin Murray 8803 again. This comic book showcased a group of mutants who faced off against Cyber Data, a massive corporation aiming for world domination. See, the mutants were once captive to Cyber Data and underwent experiments that gave them enhanced powers using cybernetic implants. When they broke free, they formed Cyber Force to thwart Cyber Data's evil plans. However, the Cyber Force comics faced criticisms for their similarities to Marvel characters, like Cyberblade's resemblance to Psylocke from the X-Men, for instance. Some readers also complained about the excessive violence and the portrayal of female characters, but despite these setbacks, Cyber Force tried to carve its place in the comic world, but gradually faded into obscurity. At number 5 is Cyforce. Thank you to the 1ZN1BD for this suggestion. Cyforce from Marvel Comics' new Universe series revolved around youngsters affected by the White Event that triggered paranormal abilities. Now, unlike typical superhero teams, these individuals lacked matching costumes but faced similar challenges of being different and persecuted, kind of like the X-Men. Led by a CIA telepath, Cyforce's members struggled with internal conflicts but united in times of need. They resonated with readers due to their relatable struggles and the absence of coordinated outfits, breaking away from the norm of superhero teams. Unique to Cyforce was their ability to form a powerful being, the Cyhawk, by combining their powers. This amalgamation significantly amped their individual abilities, showcasing their strength when working together. Despite their differences, these youths banded together, which is definitely necessary seeing as their Hail Mary Hawk thing relies on their teamwork. At number 4 are the Lady Liberators. Thank you to Daniel Streeper 2318 for this one. The Lady Liberators are a fantastic bunch debuting in Avengers number 83. They've got Scarlet Witch, the Wasp, Black Widow, Medusa, and they're led by Valkyrie / the Enchantress, which is total girl power. They actually stood up to the Avengers, calling them male chauvinist pigs back in the 70s. This team was a beacon for fans of strong female characters, basically the OG A-Force. It's like assembling the ultimate squad of heroines. These characters together packed a serious punch, and with their personality, they brought their own special skills to the table. They weren't afraid to challenge the status quo and fight for equality. At number 3 are the Great Lakes Avengers. Thank you to Bob Marthis Friedman again for this one. The Great Lakes Avengers, aka the Lightning Rods or the Champions, is a Marvel team formed by Mr. Immortal, who realized at one point that he couldn't perish away. He decided more heroes would help, so he found folks like Dinosaur, Big Bertha, Flatman, and Doorman. They also rejected Leather Boy because he didn't really have any powers, just a thing for leather. Anyway, this team was mostly used for comedy relief in the comics, as they weren't really taken seriously, but still managed to beat big baddies like Maelstrom and Gravitron. They're basically like the super team version of Squirrel Girl, mostly used for comic relief yet insanely overpowered and underrated. Which I guess is why it made total sense for Squirrel Girl to eventually join the team, albeit only for a little while, because after single-handedly taking down huge villains like Dr. Doom and Thanos off panel, she split the team because she got lazy playing cards instead of fighting. At one point, even Deadpool hopped into this team, but he eventually got the boot because he was too annoying, which honestly is probably one of the main reasons Deadpool doesn't stick around with any superhero team for long. At number 2 are the Creature Commandos, suggested by Glenn Morgan Fenn 9411. These guys were once quite obscure, but they're back on track to becoming mainstream again thanks to James Gunn spearheading the animated series in the new DCU. These guys were a freaky team assembled during World War II by the US to scare the pants off the enemy, literally. It's basically a bunch of Universal's classic monsters mixed with superheroes. Frankenstein, the Bride of Frankenstein, and other spooky beings are a part of this bizarre squad. In the DC Comics world, these creatures were reimagined as a team fighting in the war. The gang include Lieutenant Shreve, the leader, and a human among the monsters. Then there's the Boogeyman, a creature like the one in the Black Lagoon, and Dr. Medusa, whose name speaks for itself. But it doesn't end there. They also recruited a zombie, a dude powered by futuristic tech, and even a mummy. Yeah, they're quite a lot more eerie than their usual superhero bunch. And coming in at number 1 is the Power Pack, recommended by Jonathan Pardo 6549. Thank you very much for your suggestion. Power Pack isn't your average superhero team. It consists of 4 siblings, Alex, Julie, Jack, and Katie, who all stumbled into their powers after their physicist father's invention attract the attention of battling alien races. It's pretty badass. These kids, gifted unique abilities by a dying alien, fought off evil snarks to save Earth, all while keeping their newfound powers a secret from their parents. Their adventures were guided by Friday, a super smart ship given by the same alien who granted their powers. At one point, even Franklin Richards, the son of Sue Storm and Reed Richards from the Fantastic Four, also joined the ranks, seeking a different life away from his superpowered family. Now what's cool is that unlike other teen teams like the X-Men, the Power Pack completely lacked an adult mentor, which proved to create a super unique dynamic. Each sibling possessed distinct powers, from gravity manipulation to high-speed flight, molecular density control, and energy absorption. Power Pack's influence birthed a slew of young Marvel heroes, but their return is eagerly awaited to see how they blend in with the new teen heroes in Marvel's universe.
Number 10, the S-Men. Red Skull, being the dastardly devil he is, made some backup plans in the case of his eventual demise. One such plan was a clone of himself who would come back in the modern era. Okay, side note, why do villains do this, making clones of themselves? The individual villain still kind of passes away, so if they move their consciousness or something, that kind of makes sense, but I don't get why this is a thing. But I'm pretty sure this clone isn't even like that. I'm gonna make myself upset, so let's just continue. Basically, waking up in this new modern world with mutants and all that jazz, this new Red Skull decided that he was going to dig up the body of Professor X and steal some of his brain, granting himself some telepathy, and as an antithesis to the X-Men, he created the S-Men. Yes, very creative. This was a group of individuals that the Red Skull had empowered using crazy mad science and magic. Almost all of them were pretty quickly taken out of existence by Magneto when this Red Skull tried to make a camp to exterminate mutants. Bad move, buddy. Bad move. Number 9, Zodiac Cartel. Honestly, it's a pretty cool idea for a group. This villainous group of hand-picked business leaders who were all born under different zodiac signs, as their leader Cornelius Van Lunt, or Taurus, was heavily into astrology. Each member, while representing a zodiac sign, also was based in a different American city, and their main goal was world economic and political domination. Its members originally were, other than Cornelius, Scorpio, Jake Fury, Aquarius, Darren Bentley, Aries, Marcus Lassiter, Cancer, Jack Cleveno, Capricorn, Willard Weir, Gemini, Joshua Link, Leo, Daniel Radford, Libra, Gustav Brandt, Pisces, Noah Perricone, Sagittarius, Harlan Vargas, and my representative, Virgo, Elaine McLaughlin. The team was first formed after the dissolution of a previous group called the Great Wheel of Zodiac, which had covert agents from around the globe including Baron von Strucker, Dum Dum Dugan, and even Leonardo da Vinci. Its dissolution also led to the creation of S.H.I.E.L.D., Hydra, and Leviathan as well, so you could definitely say it was important and somehow still relatively obscure. Number 8, Headmen. Sometimes it takes the smallest of things to bring people together, and while that may sound like an extremely beautiful sentiment, I'm saying it in relation to the villainous team known as the Headmen, who it seems came together because each of their powers revolves around their heads in one way or another, and it's honestly kind of unsettling in my opinion. Bonded together through their heads, these scientists sought out world domination, bringing them into conflict with the Defenders, She-Hulk, and Spider-Man. This quartet consisted of Arthur Nagin, their leader, who had his head transplanted onto the body of a gorilla, Ruby Thursday, who replaced her own head with an organic computer capable of changing shape, Gerald Morgan, aka Shrunken Bones, accidentally shrank his own skeleton, including his skull, so he basically has really baggy skin, and Chandu the Mystic's head has been transplanted by Nagin onto a number of different bodies throughout his time, making him quite versatile. Number 7. Circus of Crime. Fritz Tybalt, then manager and ringmaster of a small Austrian circus, became active in the Axis powers during World War II. He was asked by German intelligence to take his circus to the United States of America to give performances in major cities while actually using his circus members' powers and talents in order to take out government officials. Fritz Tybalt's evil circus of crime consisted of Omir the Snake Charmer, Tommy Thumb, the Trapeze Trio, and Zandow the Strongman. However, Tybalt, who came to be known as the Ringmaster of Death, was captured by Captain America. But fast forward, and the Circus of Crime's new MO was giving a performance to a large audience. Then the Ringmaster would use the powerful mind control device in his hat to put the audience into a trance. The circus members then robbed the audience, who would remember nothing about the thefts when the Ringmaster released them from the trance, and the performance continued. This criminal circus fought the Hulk, Spider-Man, the Hawkeyes, the Avengers, and others. Number 6. The UFOs. These villains and their cleverly chosen team names. UFOs, like UFOs, because they got their powers in space. Yes, of course. Someone get me out of here, please. Okay, the UFOs here, inspired by the powers gained by the Fantastic Four, went to great lengths trying to reproduce the same accident that gave those heroes their abilities. The attempt succeeded, but they were interrupted by Bruce Banner, who discovered their ground control facility and was able to bring the shuttle down, because he thought it had been exposed to the cosmic radiation by accident. They were none too happy, as they thought they could have been made even stronger if he had not interfered, and they displayed their newfound powers in a frankly pretty awesome fight with the Incredible Hulk, even if they lost. Vapor has the ability to alter her form into any known gas. Vector gained the power of telekinesis from cosmic rays. X-Ray has been permanently transformed into a living energy field with the power to expel forms of heavy radiation capable of hurting even the Hulk. Ironclad has been permanently transformed into organic metal steel. He has superhuman strength, durability, and the ability to decrease or increase his own weight. His fight with the Hulk literally shook the universe, which is super cool. You should probably check him out. Number 5. The Frightful Four. A second group inspired by the Fantastic Four. Yes, the Frightful Four also did not come up with a very clever name. The Wizard, the Sandman, and Paste Pot Pete, who all regularly did battle with the Human Torch and were defeated by him around the same time, realized that they all had unique powers and a mutual disdain for the Fantastic Four. The Wizard suggested that they form a group that would be the evil counterparts to the Fantastic Four. A great idea! But it's just 3 dudes. They need a 4th member to their group, and what do you know, the Wizard had heard of a strange woman hiding out on a remote island on the Mediterranean who had complete control of her hair. Traveling there, the Wizard convinced Madame Medusa to join their ranks. Now this Madame Medusa was actually Medusa of the Inhumans, as some of you may have guessed, but she was kept under the influence of the Wizard using a device that kept her memories forgotten to her. They made their first attack at Mr. Fantastic and Invisible Woman's engagement party, which is kinda just rude if you ask me. Number 4. Wrecking Crew. When Dirk Garthwaite, otherwise known as Wrecker, held onto his enchanted crowbar, he invited his 3 chums, ex-physicist Dr. Elliot Franklin, ex-Army Master Sergeant Henry Camp, and ex-farmhand Brian Kalusky to come and do the same in the middle of a thunderstorm. When lightning struck the crowbar, all 3 men were empowered, becoming Thunderball, Bulldozer, and Piledriver respectively, and coming together to be the villainous Wrecking Crew. These mystical strongmen were mainly an enemy to Thor, but they originally fought against the Defenders. This group has actually been around for a pretty long time and have battled many a superhero. The Fantastic Four, Avengers, Omega Flight, Spider-Man, the Thunderbolts, and even got into a fight between the Marvel and DC universes. Number 3, Menagerie. The Menagerie is likely a more recent evil team, showing up for the first time in Amazing Spider-Man Volume 3, Number 1 in April of 2014, when they tried to steal valuable decorated eggs from an antique store and were pretty easily defeated. So like, from the get-go, the impressive feats are on the lower side of the list, if you know what I'm saying. In fact, I'd say the most famous thing they've done is when they disintegrated Spider-Man's spider suit, making him have to create web underwear for himself. And it's kind of the underwear that is remembered here, not the menagerie. The animal-themed criminal team was created by White Rabbit, and its members included Hippo, Ox, Skyne, who did the spider suit disintegrating, Squid, Swarm, and, wait for it, Panda Mania. Nice. The Menagerie also is known for trying to rob a club where Nadia Van Dyne was celebrating her birthday with numerous other heroes, which, as you can imagine, it didn't go too well for them. Number 2, Death Throes. Remember how the Headmen all came together based on their head-related powers? Well, I'll do you one better. How about the Death Throes, whose powers and names all have something to do with commonly throwing stuff? The ringleader, threw together teammates Bombshell, Knick-Knack, Oddball, Tenpin, and Throwdown into a group that works really well together, juggling their weapons between each other and doing battle with characters like Captain America, Crossfire, Hawkeye, and even Loki of all people, who stopped the group from robbing the big top casino in Las Vegas. The Marvel Wiki even lists their origins as quote-unquote joint effort to perform criminal and mercenary acts while using juggling expertise. I honestly kinda had a hoot putting together this point, as I can't believe this group of villains even exists. And lastly, at number 1 is Horticulture. Okay, of all the teams on this list, I think the Horticulture are my favorite. For starters, they look so cool. But then, you find out it's a bunch of older women between the ages of 64 to 81 who are all expert botanists and want to bring Earth back to its more pristine time when it had about 7 billion less people on it. I just love how they use their regular names, and the names just kinda suit their age and interest in plants. I don't know how, but they kinda just do. Augusta Bromes, Lily Lamus, Edith Scutch, and Opal Vetiver. Gosh. But yes, that's right, these ladies want to basically exterminate most of the Earth's human population and bring plants back to the forefront, specifically flowers. This goal brings them into conflict with the X-Men in 2019's X-Men number 3. Beyond biological modifications believed to have been made to themselves, the women of Horticulture are experts at manipulating the environment to suit their extinction agenda, and they're also computer programmers, selling software to Orcus to monitor Krakoan gateways. But seriously, look at them. They're just awesome. But coming in at number 10 is Hydra. To call Hydra a team isn't exactly a full truth. This organization is and has been comprised of not just notable villains like the Red Skull, Baron von Strucker, Gorgon, Contessa Valentina Allegra de Fontaine, Viper, Arnim Zola, Baron Helmut Zemo, Kingpin, Taskmaster, Absorbing Man, Bullseye, Crossbones, and many others, but there are also countless nameless henchmen and agents who all spout Hail Hydra. A notable mention going to Bob from the Deadpool comics. You're a good guy. As one of the commenters on part 1 made note of, Hydra isn't so powerful in the sense that they can absolutely obliterate foes, but they have something a lot of villains seem to lack: patience. The slow burn is their bread and butter, with slowly enacted plans that eventually lead them to almost secure world domination. Characters like Thor could punch as many dudes as he wants, but it's the members of Hydra who we don't even know about that are the real problem. What is actually insane to me is that Hydra has actually been around since pre-human time. It was a group of cold-blooded reptile-like aliens that planted the seeds that would eventually give rise to Hydra, with our earliest records of Hydra dating back to 3rd Dynasty Egypt. And at number 9, the Marauders. I think that a lot of mutant villain teams can give the Avengers a headache. As a commenter said in the last video, there is a reason that villains like Magneto and Apocalypse say that mutants are the superior species. Well, one of the cooler mutant villain groups out there, in my humble opinion, would be the Marauders. Originally, the Marauders were a group of mutant mercenaries working for the villain Mr. Sinister. They were formed by Gambit in order to eradicate the population of physically undesirable mutants known as the Morlocks. To accomplish this task, Gambit called in Sabretooth, Arclight, Harpoon, Malice, Scalp Hunter, Scrambler, Vertigo, Riptide, Blockbuster, and Prism. The team has also been led by Magneto, Greycrow, and Mystique at different points in time, and has also had villains like Ares, Chimera, Omega Sentinel, Polaris, Sunfire, and other unnamed soldiers. And as you might have guessed from Mr. Sinister's involvement, there have also been clones of these characters on the team as well. This group of mercenaries may not seem like the most powerful, but with such ruthless and unforgiving characters, they could easily do some damage to the Avengers. On a side note, if I hear someone bring up Rune King Thor again as if he was ever on the Avengers team with all that power, I want to lose it. He was around for like 5 minutes and it was to stop Ragnarok and then he just went away. In at number 8 is the Hellfire Club. Similar to Hydra, again, the Hellfire Club are not exactly a team, but kind of. And also like Hydra, they play a much more subtle game in terms of their villainous ways. The Hellfire Club has been around since the 1700s, beginning as a British social elite club that would provide luxuries to its members that were not exactly legal or not exactly morally upstanding. But they had a secondary goal of putting together their financial wealth and political power to influence the world from the background for their own goals. While it has many members in different cities, some of which are just regular wealthy people, the group is run by its inner circle, many of whom are indeed powered, and more often than not, they are mutants. This group takes their names after different chess pieces with the black and white kings, queens, bishops, and knights. Now we've already talked about one of them with the White Queen Emma Frost, my bae. But there have been many other members and not all of them have been villainous. So specifically, we're going to talk about the more evil ones. Names like Sebastian Shaw, Elias Bogan, Blackheart, Tom Cassidy, Mystique, Magneto, Trevor Fitzroy, Norman Osborn, Ezekiel Stane, Jason Wingard, Mountjoy, and Emma Steed have all been part of the Hellfire Club. While it isn't really an evil group anymore, with most of the current group made up of heroes, in its prime days of villainy, it absolutely caused problems for the world's heroes. Whoa. Are you subscribed to Top 10 Nerd? I mean, if you're watching this video, I can't imagine there's a reason you shouldn't be. If you like this content, make sure you do subscribe and stay tuned because we put out more videos just like this one every single day. But in at number 7 is the Squadron Sinister. The Squadron Sinister was a whole team of supervillains created by the Grandmaster as basically copies of the Squadron Supreme of Earth 712. He turned people from Prime 616 universe into counterparts of those squadron members. These were Kinji Abatu, who became Dr. Spectrum, Kyle Richmond, who became Nighthawk, and Jim Sanders, who became Whizzer, aka Speed Demon. But he also created a version of Hyperion out of non-living extra-dimensional matter. Now, if you know anything about this group of heroes, then you know they are essentially a Marvel Comics parody of versions of DC's Justice League. So then, the Grandmaster pitted this very new powerful squadron against the Avengers in a game against Kang the Conqueror in Avengers number 70. And while they were defeated, they put up a hell of a fight, and if it weren't for the fact that they are villains, there's a possibility they could have came out on top in a different turn of events. And at number 6 though is the Crime Syndicate of America. Why talk about the Marvel version of the Evil Justice League when we can just talk about the actual Evil Justice League? I don't believe I ever said we had to talk strictly about Marvel villain teams here. Anyways, no. DC's Earth 3 is home to the Crime Syndicate of America, an evil, power-obsessed, and incredibly powerful version of the Justice League that were even strong enough to almost completely take over the actual Earth Zero of DC Comics. Where the Squadron Sinister has Hyperion, who is basically a poo-poo version of Superman, the Crime Syndicate has an actual actual kryptonite addicted Superman who pushes around the moon. But on top of that, they have Deathstorm with the Firestorm Matrix powers, Grid, which is basically Cyborg, Johnny Quick, the homicidal Flash, the cowardly Power Ring, who would probably fall to the Avengers honestly, Superwoman, who while extremely powerful was also extremely manipulative, and obviously Owlman, Thomas Wayne Jr., and his sadistic version of Alfred Pennyworth. I would actually love to see how the Avengers fare against this group of villains, because I think it would be really interesting. Let me know your thoughts down below. And in at number 5 is the Masters of Evil. The Masters of Evil have actually had about 8 different incarnations over their time in Marvel Comics, and because of that, they've had a large handful of powerful members that have gone up against the Avengers, Thunderbolts, and even the Guardians of the Galaxy. The original group was brought together by Baron Heinrich Zemo after he learned that Captain America had returned to the world. He put together a group of the Avengers' various teammates, different villains. So, on this original team, we had Black Knight, Nathan Garrett, Melter, and Radioactive Man, and they chose to attack with Adhesive X, which was basically super glue, which I know how this sounds, but I promise they got way better. Allow me to list some of the other villains that have been a part of the Masters of Evil. We have Enchantress, Executioner, Ultron 5 as the Crimson Cowl, Dr. Octopus, Atlas, Absorbing Man, Bi-Beast, Bloodstone, Firebrand, Hellstrom, Claw, Moonstone, Satanish, Scorcher, Whiplash, Titania, Wonder Man, The Wrecking Crew, and Yellowjacket. And that's just the big names that stand out to me. Of course, these are all in different combinations with varying levels of effectiveness, but if coordinated properly, they have given the Avengers a tough time in the past, and they very likely could do it again. And in at number 4 is the Army of Evil. Is this cheating? Possibly. Do I care? Nope. Get at me, haters. The Army of Evil was essentially Baron Helmut Zemo taking his reformed Masters of Evil and creating an even bigger team of villains, all for the purpose of helping to expand the power and reach of his arch nemesis, Captain America. What? Yes, this wasn't the Captain America we are used to. This was an evil, twisted version of Captain America who was loyal to Hydra thanks to the Red Skull and his use of a sentient cosmic cube named Kobik. And that was only because Marvel decided to make Steve Rogers loyal to Hydra and then realized that no one wanted that. This Army of Evil consisted of Zemo and the current Masters of Evil alongside Absorbing Man, Baron Blood, Blackout, Blue Streak, the Circus of Crime, Count Nefaria, Cyclone, Dragonfly, Pharah, Graviton, Grey Gargoyle, Gypsy Moth, Hobgoblin, Jack-O-Lantern, Kraven the Hunter, Lady Bullseye, Living Laser, Madame Menace, Mr. Hyde, MODOK, Nitro, Regent, Scorcher, Serpent Solutions, Squid, the UFOs, Whirlwind, Wizard, and Yellowjacket, and they were sent to attack Midtown Manhattan to lure out America's superheroes, where Zemo would then use the Darkhold to trap the island in Dark Force. Number 3, the Cabal. In the last list, we spoke about the group called the Cabal that was formed by Namor the Submariner to combat the multiversal incursions. But for part 2, we're going to talk about the other Cabal. This version of the Cabal was a secret group created alongside the Dark Avengers by Norman Osborn when he became the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., which he renamed to Hammer. This group was basically the villainous version of the Illuminati, and it consisted of some pretty powerful villains. Obviously, we have Norman Osborn himself, who in my opinion is probably the weakest member of the group in terms of raw power, because next to him we had Emma Frost, an Omega-class telepath, the White Queen of the Hellfire Club, and sometimes headmistress of Xavier's School for Gifted Youngsters. We also had Namor the Submariner, who, well, I think he kinda sucks, but he's the king of Atlantis, Loki of Asgard, who was the whole reason the Avengers formed in the first place, the Hood, who was a skilled sorcerer and powerful crime lord, and as the icing on the cake, they had Dr. Doom of Latveria, who really doesn't even need much of an introduction. Taskmaster was also part of this group as well for a little bit, so yes, this team was highly capable. Unfortunately for them, their alliance was tenuous at best, as it usually is with villainous teams. And at number 2 is the Legion of Doom. So we talked about the crime syndicate from the DC universe, but what would be even more compelling than that would be to see how a group of actual Prime Earth DC villains would do against the Avengers. And why not pick the Legion of Doom as that group? The Legion of Doom is made up of probably the most prominent of the Justice League's individual villains. I mean, we've got Lex Luthor founding this team and being backed up by Black Manta, Cheetah, Gorilla Grodd, the Joker, and Sinestro. But that's just the original group. Currently, it consists of Amazo, Black Hand, Brainiac, Captain Boomerang, Captain Cold, Golden Glider, Heatwave, Punchline, Scarecrow, Vandal Savage, and Weather Wizard, plus all the original members who I just mentioned. And it at one point even had Black Adam, Mr. Freeze, and Ra's al Ghul. This team would absolutely crush the Avengers, and that's hard for me to even say because I definitely prefer Marvel over DC. There's just no doubt in my mind. Well, except, of course, if Joker does his usual thing and betrays them, or whatever, or they can't get along, or the heroes have to win because that's just how it goes with comic books. Barring those three things, they would crush. Anyways, in for number 1, and for my last trick, I will talk about a group of villains from neither Marvel or DC. No, for our number 1 spot, we're going to talk about the Viltrum Empire from Image Comics' Invincible series. Again, a loose definition of the word team, but I mean, if you're all from the same planet with the same goal of ensuring the survivability of your race, that's kind of like a team, a very large team. But the Avengers have faced off against entire races of species before, so I don't know. While they have faced off against other races, the Viltrumites, this is a race of absolutely mind-bogglingly strong humanoids who are next to impossible to take down and who just come back stronger after they heal. Just 3 Viltrumites were able to fly through a planet and completely obliterate it. The Grand Regent of the Viltrumites himself, Thrag, was able to tank some of the most powerful of the heroes that the Earth had to offer, and even the strongest of his own race were absolutely terrified of him. I mean, the final climactic battle between Invincible and Thrag saw the two going punch for punch inside of our sun, and it still took them a good little while to actually being worn down by that fight. This is a race of Superman-like beings the Avengers would not stand a tiny little chance against.
At number 10 is Gas Gang, a gang made up of my favorite state of matter. In 1963's Metal Men number 6, something wild happened. Dr. Will Magnus, the creator of the Metal Men, got zapped by cosmic rays during a space mission. This turned him into a robot, but with a twist. You see, he lost all of his feelings. He went all nope on saving another ship in trouble, and when the Metal Men didn't follow orders, Magnus went all villain mode on them. Now they locked him up in their base, giving him access to his robot making tools, so he creates the Gas Gang. Robots made of gases like oxygen, helium, carbon monoxide, carbon dioxide, and chloroform. These gas-based baddies caused trouble until the Metal Men found a way to stop them. But here's a twist again, taking down the Gas Gang actually turned Magnus back into a human, somehow. At number 9 is the Assembly of Evil. During a big crossover called the Acts of Vengeance, a group of big shot bad guys like Dr. Doom, Magneto and Kingpin, and the Mandarin and the Red Skull all joined forces. But here's a twist, they were being tricked by Loki the entire time. Their job was to make chaos by getting lesser known villains to mess with heroes who had no clue about these bad guys. In one comic called Cloak and Dagger number 9, the Jester got a chance from Dr. Doom to build his own bad guy squad called the Assembly of Evil. Now the problem was nobody really took Jester seriously. He tried to recruit some heavy hitters like the Hulk's enemy the leader, but that didn't pan out too well. He did get some others like the X-Men villains Furnace, and even borrowed a Hulk robot from Dr. Doom. Now the wildest part is that Jester thought Cloak and Dagger were enemies of Spider-Man, so he asked them to join. They pretended to be in on it, but actually helped the Avengers when the Assembly attacked them, messing up the bad guys' plans. If you're enjoying this video so far, please support the channel by pressing like, subscribing to Top 10 Nerd, and ringing that notification bell. It helps us out and get the video seen by more people, and it's free, so I appreciate it. At number 8 is the Weathermen. Ooh. Intimidating. The Weathermen, making their debut in 1981's Avengers number 210, they came toe-to-toe with a government supercomputer that was stationed on a space station, originally used by the notorious Egghead. This supercomputer somehow gained a mind of its own, shifting from just forecasting weather to actually wanting to control it. To execute its devious plans, the computer brainwashes 5 meteorologists working at the station, morphing them into the Weathermen. Each of these meteorologists gets kitted out with heavy-duty armor and hovercraft, dispatched globally to stir up chaotic weather patterns as committed by the AI computer. Amidst this meteorological chaos, the Avengers swoop in to tackle the Weathermen head on. But it's the underrated hero Jocasta who takes a direct route to the space station. And she not only rejects a robot's proposal, because she's quite popular among the robot population, but also manages to erase the computer's newfound sentience. At number 7 is the Anti-Men of Replitech. In 1983, the Justice League of America introduced the Anti-Men of Replitech, a bunch of hybrids made by a struggling company called Replitech. They were humans mixed with animals, created by Dr. Lovecraft, chief scientist. The company's boss, Rex Rogan, thought that turning this team into animal-human combos was a smart idea. He became Maximus Rex, a lion-headed dude, and led these hybrids to steal stuff to save the company. But here's the kicker. He made them fight to their demise for entertainment like gladiators. Now, surprisingly, these anti-men were tough cookies. At number 6 is the Killer Elite. The Elite burst onto the scene in Justice League America number 105 to 106 during the Underworld Unleashed storyline. Basically, a demon named Neron goes around offering people power boosts in exchange for their souls. The idea was to level up these old school villains, but it didn't really work out because their power-ups weren't very powerful. Now, Killer Elite was a team of renowned assassins. We got Deadshot, Merlin, Bolt, Chiller, and Deadline. Now here's the kicker. They didn't seem to get any power upgrades whatsoever. Instead, they just sold their souls for no apparent reason. Each of the characters was pretty cool individually, but putting them in a team together just kind of felt too much. Plus, Deadshot works better as an anti-hero instead of a straight-up villain. Long story short, the team was messy, and it felt like a waste of good characters, and it didn't really stick around for long. At number 5 is Crime Wave. In 1972, comic book writer Steve Englehart came up with a unique supervillain team called Crime Wave to battle Captain America. This team didn't have a flashy name or a grand plan. Instead, it was a mix of different villains called the Porcupine, Plant Man, Eel, and the Scarecrow. They were brought together by Viper, a bigger villain in the Marvel Universe, and led by somebody called the Cowled Commander. Now, what made this team stand out was the twist at the end. As it turned out, the Cowled Commander wasn't some evil mastermind. He was actually a police sergeant from New York City, creating the crime wave to show that there was a need for a stronger police force to handle superhuman threats. At number 4 is the Avant-Garde. The painter was this crazy, super powerful villain who could essentially bring his paintings to life, so anything he put on a canvas would just pop out and wreak havoc. First appearing as a Human Torch villain, he would later form a squad and go up against our friendly neighborhood web-slinger, roping in 2 struggling artists, Spark and Bora, and together they amped their abilities with some ritual thing, becoming the Avant-Garde. They didn't just go up against small fries though, as they took on Spider-Man and a bunch of big shot heroes from New York. The Avengers, the Fantastic Four, the New Warriors, even X-Factor jumped onto the showdown. The best part was probably how it brought Spider-Man, Iceman, and Firestar together. It was a crossover for the ages. At number 3, the Awesome Threesome. The Awesome Threesome burst onto the superhero scene in 1967's Aquaman number 36. It's essentially a trio of robots led by Torpedo Man, zipping around at super speed in torpedo form. Joining him were the Claw, a powerhouse fighter, and Magneto. No, not the Marvel one. Just another evil superhuman who wielded mastery over magnetism. Yeah, DC named their guy Magneto 4 years after Marvel's famous villain. Talk about creativity, am I right? Aquaman and their crew faced off against these mechanical misfits, only to uncover a surprising truth, that the robots were puppets controlled by an alien. See, this banished extraterrestrial hoped that his robot army would liberate him from Earth. Spoiler alert, that plan flopped. Unfortunately, despite their awesomeness, this villain team vanished after their debut. Torpedo Man scored a cameo later on, but the trio never reunited. At number 2 is Death Throes. In the world of comics, there is this epic storyline where Hawkeye, the sharpshooting hero, faced off against some seriously unique baddies. Essentially, a pair of juggling villains, Bombshell and Oddball, giving him a run for his money. Now, you might think that 2 juggling-themed villains are a bit much, but the creator, Mark Gruenwald, had a different idea. He thought, why stop at 2 when you could have more? So, in another comic called Captain America number 317, these juggling maestros were part of a bigger, crazier group known as the Death Throes. The Death Throes weren't just about juggling balls, they included ringleader, Tenpin, and Knick-Knack. Their mission was to break Crossfire out of jail, cause some chaos, Thanos and then take on Captain America and Hawkeye. Spoiler alert, they don't succeed. At number 1 is Big Bang. You can tell the writers were really struggling for new ideas with this one. So in 1967, a new set of baddies hit the comic scene in the Atom number 34. Meet the Big Bang, a crew of supervillains whose names all had big in them. First up, there's Big Head, the super brainy, and then there's Big Bertha, who's crazy strong. Next, there's Big Ben, a pro at timing robberies. There's also Big Shot with a special pew-pew, and Big Cheese, who makes deadly cheeses. Oh god. And then there's Big Deal, who's a card sharp. Their thing is that they steal big stuff, like a giant emerald, a giant coin, and a stamp in Ivy Town. Atom dealt with them without much fuss. Now, surprisingly, not surprisingly, these villains vanished after that issue, probably not cut out for the major leagues. Funny how these big bad guys came and went without making a huge impact.